Good afternoon, all the participants and our today's resource person, Dr. Suraj Sharma, sir. On behalf of Mahatma Naik Degree College, I welcome you all for this 10 days virtual research methodology workshop funded by ICSSR Western Region.
ఇప్పుడండి
Thank you. I request Harsh Shukla, sir, take over the charge.
Okay, thank you, Tushar sir. So it's my pleasure to introduce my dear friend, Dr. Suraj Sharma. So I briefly introduce sir. Okay, sir is sir did his MA in economics and PhD in economics from the Department of Economics, University of Hyderabad, and his topic of interest are gender and caste, wage differential, social mobility, welfare economics, and public policy. Sir has qualified UGC NET several times, started from 2012, 14. He got GRF in December 2014 and 2015 as well. Okay. Sir, sir is expertise in the large data set through various software packages like SPSS, Stata, R, and he is very good in the quantitative techniques. He's a life member of various professional courses, and he has also authored a book called The Socio-Economic Conditions of Scheduled Caste and Indian Perspective, Serial Publications, New Delhi. Sir has, tremendous research experience and published 18 research papers in the national and international journal, participated in 20 national and international conferences. He has been a guest lecturer for many, conferences and many other things. Okay, and he is a keynote speaker for many programs. Okay, thank you, sir. Thank you, Dr. Sharma, for accepting our invitation. Okay, and we expect a very fruitful session today. Over to you, Tushar, sir.
Thank you, Harsh Shukla, sir. Now I request Dr. Suresh Sharma, sir, take over the session.
Thank you. Thank you, Tushar, sir. And first of all, thank you, Dr. Harsh Shukla, for the generous words. First of all, I would like to thank principal and the course director of this ICSR funded program, Research Methodology Workshop, Dr. Eknath, sir. And I'm very thankful to Tushar, sir, for actually inviting me to this August gathering. And I can see that there are participants, more than 26, 25 participants are there. And now with come to my PPT presentations, and the topic that has been given to me is the introduction to research methodologies. And in this particular session, I would be handling particularly introduction of research methodologies. The broad classification is that quantitative and qualitative research methodologies. And in the next session, I think that would be held from 5:30 to 7. In that session, we would be particularly discussing about the standardization of tools, and we'll be dealing with reliability and stability and validity of the data. And I hope that the participants would be getting something out of it, and these sessions would be helpful for them to undertake a research that comes either in a quantitative or in qualitative research framework. So can I share my PPT?
Yes, sir. Yes.
And I would like to make this gathering to be participative, so that we can learn something from it. Okay, I'm sharing the PPT.
I request all the participants again to please mute yourself, that you can have good and smooth session.
Can everyone see the PPT?
Yes, Suraj sir. And Suraj sir also want interactive session. So you in between you can unmute yourself and ask your questions.
Yeah,
Or
that would be better, I think. One-way communication is not going to help anyone, I think. And whenever you have some questions, you can raise your hands, or the co-host can actually let me know that there are some questions. I can take in between, or we can take it in the last a few minutes of the session also. Uh, is it visible? The PPT is visible, or should I make it full screen?
make it full screen, sir.
Okay. Now it's fine.
Yes, yes.
Okay. So what we are going to handle in this particular session is quantitative and qualitative methods for particularly social science researchers. And in this particular session, we'll be dealing the difference, what is the basic difference between quantitative and qualitative analysis, and particularly the research methodologies. And what we'll start with quantitative analysis. Will not have some basic difference table between what is quantitative and what is qualitative analysis. We'll first deal with quantitative analysis, and in between we'll get to know what is the basic difference. Particularly if we talk about quantitative analysis, so the researchers who love quantitative analysis, they say that there is no such thing as qualitative data, and everything is either 0 or 1. So everything is binary, and for quantitative analysts, everything is numbers driven. So they love numbers, and they want to play with numbers. Sometimes qualitative analysts say that all research ultimately has a qualitative grounding, and we should see the whole big picture, because if you are not actually having a whole big picture, then you cannot concentrate just on numbers. So quantitative analysis is numbers driven, and on the other hand, qualitative analysis is actually seeing a big full picture, and having a broad perspective about any topic. uh, the second thing is that um, researcher knows that what he or she is looking for in advance. So if you are having a quantitative analysis, you know what actually you are going to do. You make some hypothesis, and then you collect data, and you employ some methods or tools in that, and you accept or reject hypothesis on the basis of your results, or on the basis of your p-values. We'll get to know later about this. Now particularly if we see, uh, when I say numbers driven means uh, it would be based on statistics, obviously. So when we are going to use numbers, it means statistics is involved in that. Then what we do in quantitative analysis, we count the number of occurrences. Let's say we want to know the gender wage gap, and we only collecting the data on particular gender, then it would not help. We actually, what we do, we collect data for male, for females also, to see the gender gap. And that is why I'm saying that the counting the number of occurrences, how many times you get that a person is getting this much, then the second person is getting this much, either he is a male or a female. By that we actually get to know about quantitative analysis. Then uh, in quantitative analysis, you have survey results, you have time series or panel data, or you can have cross section also. I know I hope that you all know what is the basic difference between cross section, panel data, and time series data. uh, let's say I give you a bag full of stamps. There are stamps, let's say stamps of a railway, let's say stamps of anything, on animals, stamps on anything, and I tell you that I distribute these stamps among all the participants, and then I say that what will you do with that? If I give you a number of stamps, then what would you do with those stamps? Obviously, you'll try to organize. You'll try to organize the stamps in types. Like you have, let's say you have stamps on national identity. Then you have one type of national identity. You have one type of, let's say, on animals. So you collect stamps of animals and you organize them according to different types, different colors. You can organize them in different shapes. So this is what quantitative analysis is all about. So you what you do is you organize the data and you distribute the data in different types, and then you analyze your data. This is called quantitative analysis. And here it works best in the later stages of your research. Whenever you start your research, you go with some review of literature, then you make your statement of problems based on these review, and then you make a research methodology. Then you actually have your quantitative data. So the quantitative analysis will work best in later stages of your research, when you will have to prove your hypothesis, that whether this hypothesis is accepted or rejected on the basis of some statistical tools. This is highly designed research plan before the collection of data. So when you collect data in quantitative analysis, you before that, before the collection of the data, you have a highly designed research plan. You have your plans ready, you have your survey schedule ready, and then you go for the data collection. I know some of them, some of you would say that uh, uh, I have a designed research plan, or a survey, then I'll collect 10% of my sample. Then I would change the survey schedule according to the answers I get from that. But basically, what I want to say is that previously, before data, yeah, hello, any question, or should I continue?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Okay, okay.
Yes, sir.
So uh, here, quantitative research often works best in the later stages of your research. As I have already mentioned, the research plan is highly designed before the data collection. Here the researchers' tools are like surveys or experiments that collects numerical data. So what you actually doing, you are collecting numerical data by any means, or by like survey or experiments, or anything with that. Now, here, the data would be in the form of numbers and statistics. I have already mentioned that. One basic difference between quantitative and qualitative analysis is the objectivity and subjectivity. Quantitative analysis is more objective than the qualitative analysis, and qualitative analysis is very subjective, because it depends upon the views and ideas of particular persons. Now why I'm saying objective is because it is less biased by the researcher, because you're collecting data and you don't interfere in the collection of the data. But in qualitative analysis, because that is more subjective, you will have more ideas, you will have more views, then there may be some biasness from the point of view of the researcher. You'll get to know about that in later stages of this PPT particularly. So, and what quantitative analysts say, that numbers do not lie. So whatever numbers you are having, this is the truth, and everything else is a lie. So numbers are not telling you a lie. For example, if you have a bottle that is half full or half empty, that is your choice, that whatever you say that it is half full or half empty. Next thing is the quantitative analysis are more empirical. What does it mean by empirical? Can anyone elaborate about this? What are empirical researchers? Empirical research. Anyone? Okay. Why I'm saying that quantitative analysis are more empirical is only because what empirical research is, if another researcher does the exact same experiment, please mute yourself.
Mute your mic.
Okay. So what I was mentioning that what empirical research is. So if another researcher does the exact same experiment, the exact same way, the results would be same. These
Sir,
are called-
sorry to interrupt, sir.
Yeah.
Sir, they're also replying in the chat box. Okay.
Okay. I
So,
cannot see the chat when I go through this thing. Oh, it is based on primary data which is verifiable through observations. Yes. We can say that. So I hope now the participants know what is empirical research. So empirical research means if someone else is doing the same research with same conditions, then the results would be same. So that is called empirical research. So the quantitative analysis is more empirical because it is based on data, and every time you collect data, not so much things are going to change with constant with some ceteris paribus. So if you are making some hypothesis and controlling some variables, then you would get the same results again and again. This is called empirical research. The next important thing here is to quantitative analysis is used to test hypothesis, as I have already mentioned that and what hypothesis is a pre-statement, or you can say a proposition that you're making about the population, or you're making about the sample that let's say that there is no gender wage gap. So this may be a hypothesis, and on the basis of your data collection, on the basis of your data analysis, you can reject or accept this hypothesis, whether there is no gender gap or there is gender gap or not. So the quantitative analysis would be particularly depending upon hypothesis made by you based on the review of literature. Now here you don't have the particular context in quantitative analysis. Particularly I talk about quantitative analysis. We don't have the context, so it just tells that it's occurring. So what phenomena you are actually collecting data on, you just know that this is occurring. So if something is occurring, you are collecting data, you are pointing it out in the form of numerics, that whether if it is happening, then I'll give 1. If it is not happening, I'll give 0, all like that. So you don't have to have particular context to collect data. Next, here the researcher tends to be separated from the subject matter. Why I say is that and it is called observer's paradox. Anyone have any idea about observer's paradox? What observer's paradox is? Okay. So we'll deal with this observer's paradox later in this presentation, when I'll elaborate qualitative data. Fine. Now, qualitative analysis. What qualitative analysis is? Now we'll see the basic difference between quantitative analysis and qualitative analysis. Now, qualitative analysis is actually used intensively in social sciences, and particularly if you see archaeology, linguistics, history, in these subjects, the qualitative analysis is used very extensively. And it is all about looking at the big picture, or you can say the telling the stories. Now, whenever you are doing a qualitative analysis, you tell a story to the readers, that and this story would be a whole picture of that particular phenomena, or whatever you are actually gathering. Now, if I take the example of gender wage gap, now a quantitative analyst will collect data on wage, hourly wage or monthly wage, and based on that, he'll or she will actually get to know that what is the mean hourly wages for male, what is the mean hourly wages for female in a particular sector or in a particular area. Then he'll compare the mean average of the hourly wages, and then he or she will come to a conclusion that whether there is gender wage gap or not. But from a qualitative perspective, the person or the researcher can explore so many things. That is why I'm saying it's a big picture. Then he or she can actually interrogate on what are the causes of these gender wage gap, and why females are actually earning less than males for a particular job or a particular in a particular area. So he or she can actually take a time use survey to actually have a bigger picture, or a bigger knowledge on what is the reason and why these differences are there. So I hope this will clear the difference between quantitative and qualitative analysis. Now, in qualitative analysis particularly, you get to know about who, when, what, why, where, etc. All these questions are answered in a qualitative analysis. That is why I'm actually pointing it out, that it would be a big picture. It would be a detailed description of a particular phenomena, or whatever you are studying, or whatever your research area is. It may only roughly know the researcher questions or focus of the research. Okay. Now, here the researcher roughly know the research questions or focus of the research. Whatever he or she actually explore during the review or during the collection of the data, then he or she would get to know about the research question, or what should be the focus of this research. Because in earlier stages, he don't have, or he or she don't have any idea about what is going to happen, what data he is going to have in the form of quality, in the form of let's say words, in form of emotions, in form of ideas, in form of views, in form of values. So here the basic difference between quantitative and qualitative analysis is that in quantitative analysis, you before you go to collect data, you have a research plan that is very good research plan, very systematic, very structured. But here in qualitative analysis, you don't have that much of a structured research question or focus area when you go for data collection. In between, you get to know about what may be the research questions from this particular phenomenon. Let's say you have gone for a survey, and you get to know some emotion points or some values from a particular participants, and you get to know that yes, this can be this area can be very fruitful if I go with this particular theme, or if I go with this particular idea, then this would be helpful for future research. Then your research question would change, your focus would change in between. So this is the basic difference between qualitative and quantitative analysis. Next here, the design is developed during the research work. As I've already mentioned, that you design your your research during the research work. When you collect data, when you review the data, then you develop your design. And it is preliminary research or making context clear is very important in qualitative analysis. So you go for preliminary research, you make your context very clear that what should be the research question, what should be your focus area. And this all happens during your data collection, during your extensive research work, during your extensive review of literature. And that is why we say that here the tool is the researcher. Researcher itself is the tool in qualitative analysis, because if researchers knows very well, if a researcher have a big picture about the phenomena or about the problem, then he or she can have a very good qualitative analysis. Next, here the data would be in form of picture, in form of objects, words, arts, video, etc. On the other hand, in quantitative analysis, you had your data in form of numbers, in binary, let's say in 0 and 1. And the next point is, as I already mentioned, that the objectivity and subjectivity. So in qualitative analysis, you see the qualitative analysis is more subjective. And why I'm saying is that more subjective, because here the researcher is involved in the research process. Views of researchers, ideas, and how a researcher can explore a particular phenomenon is the main tool for qualitative analysis. And that is why I'm saying that the qualitative analysis is more subjective and quantitative analysis is more objective. Now, here the interpretation of events is important. If you cannot interpret the events very accurately and very finely, then your qualitative analysis would not be that much good than if you haven't interpreted, or if you haven't interpreted the events very well. So the next thing is participant observation. What does it mean by participant? Can anyone elaborate on that? Participant. Okay, participant is a person who is actually participating in a survey or in an observation. Participant observation means watching the participant. That is called participant observation. So in qualitative analysis, particularly we observe participant, and on the basis of the observation, we interpret the events, and we actually narrate the story. So this is how in qualitative analysis we do research. Here the tools are like interviews, focus groups. You can have interviews, extensive interviews, or you can have personal interviews, or you can have interviews of groups. So that is called focus group interviews. And qualitative analysis is more rich in information. As I've already mentioned that this is a whole big picture. So obviously this will have more information than the quantitative analysis. In quantitative analysis, you only have data in forms of numbers, but here you have data or information in pictures and objects and words and in interpretation of events, and this is more subjective. That is why we call qualitative research more rich in information. Because in quantitative analysis, what quantitative analysis is? Data mining. You are just doing data mining, but in qualitative analysis, this is not just data mining, it is the interpretation of events. And obviously when you want more information, then you need more time. The qualitative analysis are more time consuming. You have to give more time than the quantitative analysis when you actually go for a qualitative analysis or qualitative study or research. The next thing is, it is less able to be journalized. Why I'm saying this is less able to be generalized is because here you have a lesser sample than the quantitative analysis. Because it is more time consuming, you cannot have a census, or you cannot have a large sample. And whenever you don't have a large sample, then you cannot generalize your ideas. The other thing, reason is that why you cannot generalize the results of qualitative analysis is only because of the subjectivity. When you have subjectivity, then you have different opinions, you have different views, you have different values, and different values, different values, different views, uh, uh, with every participant, then you cannot generalize your idea, or you cannot generalize the things or the results you are actually gathering. Let's say that you are having an ethnographic study of a particular tribe on a particular geographical area. Then you would be only you can only generalize the idea or the results on that particular population or that particular sample. You cannot generalize the results of this particular tribe on the on other particular tribe, or on other population of the other geographical area. So this is less able to be generalized. As far as quantitative analysis, you can generalize very well, but we cautious with the standardization of tools. We'll get to know what standardization of tools is. Next, here is researcher tends to become subjectively involved in the research. That I have already mentioned, that this is called observer's paradox. What observer's paradox is, let me give you an example. By that you will understand what observer's paradox is. Let's suppose I need to go into a community, and I have to conduct a research in that particular community. Now, going into that community particularly, how can I be sure that I'm not influencing or altering the behavior of community A? By simply being present. So if you are present there, obviously they'll change the behavior, and the outcome would be very different when they know that you are there to collect information or data on that particular community. That is called observer's paradox. Now, what paradox is there? If you don't go, you cannot collect data. Then what would you do? If you go there, what you are doing, you are actually altering, or you are influencing the outcome, because they know that you have come to collect the data on, let's say, the culture, or let's say the society of that particular tribe, or let's say that particular community. Then obviously they will show you the positive things about that particular community or about that particular tribe. Let's say they are actually celebrating their festival. Now they'll put forward the positive things before you. And if you don't go there, then obviously you don't have data. So this is called observer's paradox, and you will have to minimize this observer's paradox. Okay, and there are the ways to deal with this problem. So one way is that be on a secret mission, and you don't have to tell them, or you don't have to actually say them that you have come to this community to collect data, or you are collecting data for a particular research. Because the time you say this, then their behavior will be changed, and their views, their ideas, the portrait of that idea would be changed. So what you can do is be on a secret mission. Just observe the behavior, observe the events, observe the values or culture from outside. This is very difficult, but many researchers do that. And those who are not doing that, they are in observer's paradox, that what should they do. And obviously if they are involved in that particular particular data collection, then bias would be there, because the qualitative research is more subjective. So this is called observer's paradox. I hope everyone now would be familiar what observer's paradox is. Okay.
So kindly read the messages.
Yes. Now the questions are here. Critical understanding is very important in qualitative research. Yes, obviously. That is why I already mentioned that the tool here in qualitative analysis is the researcher only, and he or she should know the context very well. If he or she don't know the context, then he or she cannot actually narrate the story very well, and he or she wouldn't be able to critically analyze the events of a particular phenomena. So Adil Farooq ji is very right that critical understanding is very important in qualitative research. What about confidentiality? Is asking what about their confidentiality? Confidentiality. Whenever we collect data, we care about ethics in research, and we do research in the ambit of these ethics. So there is no such problem of confidentiality, and we are not gathering the data for other purposes. We say in every research that this data collection would be particularly we would be utilizing this data in research only. We would be not giving this data to any agency or private agency to actually have something out of that data. So there is no such problem of confidentiality in qualitative or quantitative research. Which is best useful, qualitative or quantitative? Okay, Dr. Lakshmi Narayan ji, the answer you get in few minutes. In few minutes, you would be getting your answer. Okay, now we'll come to this PPT. Methods of qualitative data analysis. Now, particularly if we talk about qualitative data analysis, then we have some methods. Then we first what we say is that what is qualitative data? So most of the researchers do research and they say that my study is qualitative. And how your study is qualitative? That I have collected qualitative data. Then I say, what is qualitative data? They say gender. If I'm going for a gender study, and then it is qualitative. So that is not qualitative. What you are doing is you are having male and female sample, and you are giving binaries to them, either 1 to female and 0 to male, and then you again come to quantitative analysis. So that is not qualitative analysis. What qualitative data is, if not numbers, then what? If not numbers, then data sources may be interview transcripts. Okay. Whatever you are having, if let's say you are having an interview and you are writing it down, every word to word you are writing it down, or you have a tape recorder and you're recording every word of that particular interview. Now you can have documents, large documents. You can have this can be your data in qualitative analysis. Survey responses can be your data source for qualitative data analysis. Images, visuals, videos, all these things can be your data in qualitative analysis. Now, what idea is there? The idea is there to describe, to make context, to have ideas, to explore these context ideas in description, in a comprehensive manner. And as I already mentioned, that this is incredibly challenging and time consuming. It takes a lot of time. That is why those researchers who are actually having qualitative data analysis, they spend a lot of time in their research. And to have some information, some important information, you need hours of your precious time. Now here the application may be on primary and secondary both. So you can have primary data or you can have secondary data. Let's say you have a video Let's say you have a transcript from from a library, and you are actually analyzing that a particular phenomena, and you are collecting literature for your particular phenomena. That then you have a secondary data from that particular library. But you can have also primary data with what you have collected from survey responses or from interview transcripts. That is called primary. So in qualitative analysis also, you can have both application, primary and secondary. Now I'll tell you about some important methods of qualitative data analysis, and those methods, I'll elaborate 6 important methods of qualitative data analysis. I'll give you a gist of that so that you can actually explore these methods in future or in your future researches. Now, the first one is content analysis. What content analysis is that, if I simply, in simple words, if I say that content analysis is a research tool used to determine the presence of certain words, themes, or concepts within some given qualitative data. Let's say I have an example for you. Researcher can evaluate language used within a news article. So you have here the data source, news articles, and you can have different news articles which have previously published. Now, what you're doing is you to search for bias or partiality. Which type of bias or partiality in language? Researchers can then make inferences about the messages within the text, that whether these news articles have some languages which are portraying bias or partiality to some, let's say, to some particular social identity or particular social group. So here you have content analysis. You have a content. What content you have? You have newspaper articles, a collection of newspaper articles, and you're going through rigorously those newspaper articles. You are actually evaluating patterns, and you are collecting the themes, words, and concepts from those newspaper articles. Let's say you want to explore about how political speeches are about terrorism. So you collect data or you collect political speeches on terrorism, and you analyze these particular speeches with the help of content analysis. Now, content analysis is very common and straightforward method of qualitative data analysis. And here you must have a clear research question before the start of your analysis. So if you want to have an idea about the biasness or partiality in the language used in newspaper articles, then you have a clear idea that you want to explore this. And based on your research question, you collect the data. Okay. Here you bring a slight quantitative angle also, because when you collect data on content analysis, you particularly select some themes out of that, or certain words from that particular articles. Let's say in political speech about the terrorism. So here terrorism is your basic theme, and political speech is your basic theme. So here the two words are there, political speech and terrorism. So what political speech and which type of political speech are there in the sphere? Let's say if we talk about Indian history, then you say you can actually gather the data with the help of content analysis. Now, what are the issues here? The issue is here that that is very common, time consuming, which is everywhere in qualitative analysis. And here you can lose some important nuances from particular communications. And you should have a specific timeline for each and every content analysis to examine patterns in communication. in a replicable and systematic manner is called content analysis. So if you are doing a particular research in the areas like, for example, I have given you, then you can use content analysis for your qualitative data analysis. Next is your narrative analysis. And I hope you know the basic meaning of narrative. Narrative is actually telling the stories. And it is very powerful method of qualitative data analysis. And what actually you do here is listening to people, telling the stories, and analyze their stories and ways they are told. So whatever they are saying in their own words, how they are told, you are analyzing it. Okay. For example, narrative of a prisoner trying to justify their crime. Now let's say you want to actually study that why rapes are happening, and what are the narrative of a prisoner, those who have been abducted, or those who have been charged for a rape case, that what is their point of view and how they actually trying to justify their crime. So their narrative. So with the help of narrative analysis, you can do this very well. Let's say you actually want to have that the entrepreneurs talk about the struggle in their career. So you can actually have data like videos of entrepreneurs talk, and then you actually get word by word what actually their struggle was in their career. So because here what entrepreneur has done, he actually told you a story about their career and how they actually reached to this point. So this narrative, or this particular story would be actually narrative analysis. What you will do is you will listen to those stories and you will analyze them according to the way they are told. Okay. It provides insight into people's worldviews and perspective. That is already it's a fact that whenever you are having a story and someone is telling you a story, obviously it would be their perspective and their worldviews, how they think, how they actually behave, or what are their values, what are their perspectives, and this will provide the insight into these things. Obviously the sample size would be very small in narrative analysis, because you don't have so many narratives from a prisoners, and you don't have so many entrepreneurs talk, so you would be having a sample size that would be very small. But from this particular sample, let's say the Ratan Tata's talk on the struggle in his career, then you can have so many insights from these narrative and from this particular narrative analysis, and you can make you can actually make uh, judgments, or you can make some narration to tell others that this was the way, or this was the story of a particular struggle. Now, some issues are there in narrative analysis, and the one issue is that it is difficult to reproduce in subsequent researches, because everyone's view and everyone's perspective would be different from others. That is why it is not reproducible. The second thing is that here research bias is very much. I'll give you an example. Let's say you are having a narrative analysis, and you are actually watching a video CEO of PepsiCo, I think. Huh? So if you are a female, you would relate much more, and you say, yes, this a particular entrepreneur who is a female. So there may be some research bias, as we say that the same genders are actually asking each other, or same gender is actually interviewing the particular gender for a narrative of a prisoners trying to justify their crime, and you hate rapists, then what would be your narrative? Your narrative would be influenced by your ideas or your perspective. And that is why what we say in the narrative analysis, or particularly not in narrative analysis, in whole qualitative analysis, that you should be very attentive when you are actually collecting data, or you are actually narrating the stories. And you should avoid bias. You should be very neutral when you collect data. So that is narrative analysis. I hope all understood what narrative analysis is. The third one is discourse analysis. And as you know what discourse is actually talking about some phenomena that is very, let's say, nowadays, gender equality. Everyone talks about gender equality. So how a CEO speaks about gender equality may be a topic for you for a discourse analysis. Maybe politically speaks about terrorism, maybe a discourse for you, that how the politics have understood terrorism in present scenario, or in history, how the political speeches or politician speaks about terrorism. Now, what discourse analysis is actually analyzing use of language, maybe conversation or a speech, within its social context, culture, or history. So whatever the social context is, whatever the culture is, whatever the history is, it is actually gonna influence the dynamics, or gonna influence the society. So how people speak, how they reflect the context and the culture, is actually the discourse analysis. It will tell about the discourse analysis will tell about the society, about the culture, what would be the history, because of these discourse, you will get to know what people's views are, what people's views on gender equality. So when you have a discourse and you are analyzing that discourse, then you will get to know that how people think about gender equality, and why someone is actually hating, and why someone is actually loving gender equality. So uh, whatever you are actually getting from this discourse would tell about your context, would tell about your culture, would tell about your history, what would have been your history. So understanding culture, history, and power dynamics is the main objective of discourse analysis. From discourse analysis, you can understand very well what would have been the history of this particular geographical area, what would have been the culture, and how the power dynamics has been changed over the years. So this all can be done with discourse analysis. You cannot do a quantitative analysis to understand your culture, to understand your history or power dynamics. This can only be done with the qualitative methods or qualitative tools, and discourse analysis is very helpful in this. So if your research area actually lies in the ambit of this discourse, then you can have a discourse analysis. Here particular issue is that you should have a specific research questions. As earlier I've already mentioned, that whenever you go for these type of discourse, or whenever you go to narrate stories, you should know before what the discourse is. If you don't know about gender equality, then how can you make a discourse analysis? If you don't know about politics and terrorism, then how would you be expecting to get something out of this discourse analysis? So you should have specific research questions before you actually enter discourse analysis on a particular topic. The next important research method is thematic analysis, and here the focus is on themes and patterns. And here the themes and patterns means patterns of meaning in a data set. So whatever data set you have, let's say you have a video, image, or something else, you actually focus on themes and patterns. What is the pattern in a particular picture? What is a theme of a particular picture, or in a particular video, or in a particular transcript? And you group them according to similarities, and these are called themes. So you group them according to similarities, and you identify the key themes in large bodies of text. This is very helpful with the help of thematic analysis. When you have large bodies of text, then you only identify key themes. Okay, you identify key themes. Let's say I'll give you an example of that. Let's say you say, what are students experience with the shift to online learning? So here you can have a thematic analysis like, it is very useful when looking for subjective information. So themes may be anxiety. Let's say those students have experience of anxiety when they have shifted to online learning. So whenever in the text you have anxiety, you identify it as a key theme, and you put it as a theme in your group. And then maybe pressure of online learning, maybe dullness because of hours of learning in front of laptop, or in front of a mobile equipped with internet. You can have some dullness, and you can have some restlessness in your body. So these are the themes when you are actually going to deeply understand what are the students experiences while shifting to the online learning. Then these key themes can help you in making opinions. So the next thing is that it help you identifying people's opinions and perspective. That is all about qualitative analysis, because it is very much subjective than the quantitative analysis. So here in thematic analysis too, you would be having people's opinions and perspectives. Your research questions may change as one undertake thematic analysis. So because let's say you have come to a conclusion that yes, anxiety is a theme, and in later stages you saw that this anxiety is because of the dullness, or because of the continuous spending hours in front of laptop or in front of mobile. Then your research question may change, because here you can make a research question as because of this dullness, the students are feeling the problem of anxiety, and they don't want to actually continue this online type of learning. So this is what thematic analysis is all about. Particularly the issue is you should have a factor, you should factor in a buffer of extra time to cater for iterations and revisions in thematic analysis, because here you have a large body of text, and in this large body of text you identify themes, then you come to key themes, and by grouping them you identify key themes, then you make some hypothesis, and then you actually come to a conclusion. So you should have a buffer of time when you actually having a thematic analysis. So if you have make an idea that in 3 or 4 years you would be completing your research project, or you would be completing your PhD, then have 1 year of buffer in that thematic analysis, because you may encounter research questions which are actually now emerged from your analysis. And those research questions were not there in the starting point of your PhD. Now you actually encountered with a fresh question, and you will have to actually entertain that research question in your analysis. Now the fifth one is grounded theory, and hello, Professor Tushar. How much time I have for this first session?
Up to 5, sir.
Okay, fine. I think I'm going well. Now, grounded theory. What grounded theory is, It involves the construction of hypotheses and theories using the data at hand through a series of tests and revisions. This is called grounded theory. So here the intention is to create a new theory. That is why we are calling it a grounded theory. You want to create a new theory using your data at hand through a series of tests and revisions. Here, the grounded theory actually aims to build a new theory based on your data. It involves the application of inductive reasoning, and we'll get to know what deductive and inductive reasoning in later stages. For now, you understand what inductive reasoning is. It is based on the observations. From observations, you actually move to making a theory. So here you have data, and you, with the help of this data, you actually create a theory. So that is called inductive reasoning. We'll get to know about later that what inductive and deductive reasoning is. For example, let's say what factors influence the participation of males and females in labor force in services. As we know that the labor force participations of males and females are very different in different areas. So what factors are actually influencing the participation, and what we actually want to see that how the participation of male is different from the participation of females. And you would be interested in making a new theory that that is actually telling about the factors which are influencing these participations, particularly let's say in services. So you need a grounded theory analysis or grounded theory application of qualitative analysis to actually come to a conclusion or to actually make a theory. And here you know that theory must emerge from the data itself. You have data in the form of other than numbers, and then you actually you make a completely new topic, and the new theories are actually developed with this grounded theory only, because you must have come across different theories of labor participation. And one of them is, let's say that the theory is about U-shaped GDP FLP theory, that is telling that when GDP or national income increases for a particular geographical area or particular country, then in the starting phase, female labor participation decreases. Okay, and when this GDP or national income increases to some extent, then again female labor participation increases in that particular country. So this is uh, uh, this is a theory which is called GDP FLP U-shaped theory, and this is based on data. So what actually you are doing is completely making a new topic or new theory from the data itself. That is called grounded theory, and it is very good choice when researching completely new topic. If you are having a very new topic, then you can have grounded theory analysis to actually make hypothesis, and on the basis of your data you actually create new theories. Next is IPA, and the name is interpretative phenomenological analysis. What does it mean by IPA? IPA explores people's personal interpretations of a life event. So let's say you are having a research on motherhood, how females in their motherhood feels about pregnancy, feels about their baby, feels about the mood or the emotions. Then IPA would be very helpful in analyzing the personal behavior or interpretation or views or perspective of a mother. Okay, because now here what actually you are doing, you are experiencing what the person has actually experienced. Okay, now let's say a person met with car accident, Now you actually having a personal experience of that particular person who have gone through a car accident, and whatever he or she has felt about, you cannot actually explore, or you cannot actually analyze that thing if that person don't explore to you. So there are some more examples, like being in a coma or being in a refugee camp. Then if you are actually, let's say you are having an research on refugee camps, now how people feel about being in a refugee camp, then you can have IPA analysis, because it is subject centered. The subject here is what a person feel being in a refugee camp. So this is the subject, and now you are actually having the personal experiences of those persons who are actually a member of a refugee camp. So all these type of analysis can be done in the in the ambit of interpretative phenomenological analysis. Here are some issues are there, that you should not lose the depth of the experience while you collect the data, and be very careful of personal bias, because in qualitative data analysis, because it is subjective, and your views can actually create problem, and you should be very neutral when you are collecting data. So IPA is all about is an approach to actually is an approach to psychological qualitative research within an idiographic focus. What is idiographic focus is? It is relating to the study or discovery of particular scientific fact or processes as distinct from the general law. So whatever you are experiencing is very new, is not normal. Okay, so what a mother feels in her motherhood would be very emotional, would be very unique from the other. A person who is in coma, how he feels, or how he or she feels, would be very different. Okay, so you are actually gathering your the personal experiences of these particular persons. Okay, uh, now qualitative coding. Any questions till now? Here Adil Faruqi ji said that mental status of people who were affected during the Kerala floods. Phenomenological analysis example. Yes, obviously, because they felt that thing. And if you are going to collect data on that, then you can have IPA analysis to collect data on the mental status of the people who actually got affected during the Kerala floods. So a very good example by Mr. Adil. Thank you. Now, these were the methods. Now, how actually you do it? Now, for that you will have to do coding, obviously. And what coding is in qualitative analysis is actually labeling. Here you label, you don't put it in numbers, you label your code. Okay, and the process is a process of creating and assigning codes to categories and data extracts. Okay, now you here what you actually do here in qualitative analysis, you identify themes and patterns. You don't have 1 2 3 4, you don't have numbers, so you have only themes and patterns. You will have to actually group them and you will have to process the pattern. So in qualitative analysis, what coding is all about is deriving themes and patterns. What you actually do here, and in coding and qualitative analysis go hand in hand. In qualitative analysis, whatever you are coding, your qualitative analysis is also is you are doing your qualitative analysis, and while doing your qualitative analysis you start coding your data. Okay, and here the process of labeling and grouping similar type of data is called qualitative coding. it will actually helps in validity check and systematic to actually approach very systematically, transparently. So coding is very important while you do qualitative analysis. I hope you know what coding in qualitative analysis. It's all about making groups of themes and then identifying themes and process of labeling. You label your themes and patterns. Next is type of coding. This will work in both quantitative and qualitative analysis. Okay, so what the type of coding is, I've already mentioned that. I'll tell you what deductive and inductive reasoning is, and this will come later. This is deductive and inductive coding. What deductive coding is, here with deductive coding, you as a researcher begin with a set of pre-established codes and apply them to your data set. That is called deductive reasoning. Okay, deductive coding. For example, you are having priori codes on eating habits. So what you are actually having, you have a pre-established codes. You have gone through extensive review of literature, and you have a priori codes. So this is called deductive coding. In inductive coding, as already mentioned, that inductive reasoning is actually helping to create a new topic or create a new theory. So what you do reverse here. You create your set of codes. Okay, and with your set of codes, you create a new theory, or you can create a new topic. For example, you have open-ended questionnaires. So in open-ended questionnaires, you have a transcript, a whole transcript. Whatever the interviewee has told you, that you have collected all the information, and now you are going to make labels. Now you are going to identify your themes, and based on your themes and your labelings, you create your own sets of codes, and that is how you actually make a new theory or create a new theory. And one question was there, that what would be better, qualitative analysis, quantitative analysis, deductive or inductive? Always use a hybrid one. So here too we are using hybrid, because a mix of two would help. In hybrid approach, what will you do? You will start with a set of priori codes. Okay, that is called deductive. And when you actually explore the idea, then you can have new codes. So you actually add new codes on the data. That is called inductive. So you have a hybrid coding, a mix of two, by having both a priori set of codes and then new sets of codes. So this is how you do coding. Now in coding particularly, you have initial coding. Okay, that is called the general overview. And then you have a line by line coding. Line by line coding, what you do actually, you delve deeper into the data, and what will you do? You will organize your data into a formalized sets of codes. It means you are stepping ahead of initial coding. So initial coding, let's say you have identified some themes, and in line by line coding, you are identifying key themes from those themes. And how you would get your key themes is actually when you delve deeper into your data, and you group them, or you actually formalize these sets of codes, then only you can get that. Now here, popular coding methods are there, and you must know about these coding methods. And I'll just give you a gist of these things, so that you can actually explore later that how and what coding would help you in your research. So you actually put your research in these different codings. Okay, so I'll give you some examples, and whatever you are doing in whatever field you are doing your research, you can actually choose one of them, or two of them, or three of them. Okay, now first of all, we'll discuss about in vivo coding. What in vivo coding is the use direct codes from the participants. Here, whatever the participant is telling, let's say he's telling a story, then what words he or she has used, will use those words as our themes. Will not change, or will not make synonyms of that, will not make will not translate that thing into another language. Okay, so let's say I'll give you an example. Let's say you are working on Devdasi system. I don't know how much of you know about Devdasi system. What I have studied in literature, this is one type of forced prostitution, and it is related to a social group. So Devdasi is a word that a person can actually elaborate on it. The participant has elaborated this word, or used this word. Now you will use this word as it is. You will not change the word in your analysis. This is called in vivo coding. So using direct codes from the participants, you will not use your mind here. You will avoid trying to infer meaning in vivo coding. Okay, now different languages and different culture studies are actually based on in vivo coding. If you are a linguistic, or if you are having a cultural study or ethnographic study, then you should use in vivo coding. For example, let's say I'll give you an example, that some people say that future and past are different. Like some say that future is in front of them. Okay, now the other person can say that no, future is not in front of us. Future, we don't know about the future. Okay, so how can it be in front of us? Okay, and the same analogy goes with the past. Those who say that past is in front of us, they say that yes, past has happened, so it is in front of us. But most of the people say that past is not in front of us, it is behind us. So this is the view, the difference of views or difference of ideas. Many people say that the future is in front of us. Many people say that no, future is not in front of us, it is behind us, because we cannot see future. I hope you understood. Any questions? No? Fine. Now we'll go ahead to process coding. What process coding is? Process coding, use of actions based codes are there. Means what you are doing is observing the actions from outside. Okay, it is mostly non-verbal communication. So what you actually doing, you are sitting outside a community and just watching what they are doing, and you actually observe the movement, you observe the procedure. Let's say you are having a study on an ethnographic group, and you are just sitting outside, and you are not involved in their festival. Now whatever they are doing in their festival, you are only observing the actions, and on those actions, based on those actions, you are making your codes. So this is called process coding. And here you allow you the process coding allow you identify non-verbal communication or events in a data set. Okay, this is called process coding. So whenever you are actually coding actions, you should use process coding. The third one is descriptive coding. What descriptive coding is? It involves using a word to encapsulate a general idea, concept, or event. As the name goes, descriptive. So in descriptive, you can actually have an idea that you will have to describe it. Okay, so useful. It is very useful when dealing with data that appear in forms other than text data. So text, if you have other than text data, you can have a descriptive coding. For example, you have video clips, you have sound recordings, or you have images. So you can have descriptive coding. Let's say you have identified a theme that is called, let's say, food. So that involves a group of people discussing what they ate throughout the day. So people are discussing what they have ate throughout the day, and you identified your theme that is called food. So the descriptive coding would be very helpful in these type of analysis. The next one is a structural coding. What structural coding is, it involves coding based on specific structural attributes of the data set. And it is very useful when working with large data sets. Let's say you are making a study on some dissertations. So you have some PG dissertations and you want to identify the quality of the PG dissertations. Then you will collect all the dissertations and you have a large data set, and the structural coding would be very helpful here. It will help you to navigate from one code to another, or navigate to and access to sections of data quickly in a large data set. That is called structural coding. Then next is value coding. Value coding, as the name goes, it will relate to the participants' worldviews or perspectives. Okay, it will focus on excerpts that provide insight regarding the values, attitudes, and beliefs of the participants. So if you are, let's say you are interviewing a person or a group of persons, and you catch the words like I feel, I need, I think, it's important, then you suddenly you catch these words, then you identify that you are going to use value coding here, because I feel means the person is giving you his or her perspective. Okay, I think or it's important, then it means that the person is going to actually give his view or his world views or his insight. Okay, and it is very useful to explore cultural studies, cultural values. So whenever you are actually having a research topic like cultural values or interpersonal experiences, then you should use value codings. Nowadays you have so many softwares to actually code these type of themes and this type of qualitative data, but most of the researchers use only MS Word to code these words, to actually search these words or labels or codings in their analysis. They don't use those softwares, but you have some softwares for these types of codings. Okay, any questions?
No, sir.
Fine, should I go ahead? Now the part 2 is actually relating to methods of quantitative data, and you can start with some questions that what under what conditions do people migrate, what is the influence of COVID-19 pandemic on livelihood of the poor. All these questions, you can collect data. You can collect data in the form of numbers, and you can actually make hypothesis that what is the role of economic growth in labor participation. You can collect data and you can actually come to a conclusion. So here what important is, in importance of research methods in quantitative analysis is that all empirical research questions have one thing in common. What is one thing? And necessity to use adequate research methods to answer them. As we have already seen the qualitative methods, now we'll see quantitative methods. And collection of data is very important. Either it is qualitative or quantitative analysis, you will have to collect data. You will have to use appropriate modeling techniques. You will have to analyze the outcome. And the research methods are actually the bread and butter of these empirical research. So as I already mentioned, that quantitative analysis are very empirical in nature, more empirical. And I'm not saying that every quantitative analysis is empirical research, then but most of the quantitative analysis are empirical, because someone else can do the same research, okay, with the help of the data. Now why quantitative methods are particularly important for you? Because data are everywhere. Okay, you now every second, whenever you scroll your apps like Amazon India or Flipkart, you are actually becoming a part of large data set. And whenever you search for something, it is actually going into the cloud of that data. So every second the data is generating. So the quantitative analysts say that data is everywhere, so you should use quantitative analysis in place of qualitative analysis. Now, what is the more important thing here? It is evidence based, and you can make policy implications that are evidence based. You make hypothesis, you reject or accept hypothesis, and on the basis of that you make policy implications. Okay, you can damn statistics, that is the another thing. And quantitative methods, those who have knowledge of quantitative methods, the job market is there, huge demand is there for large scale data analysis, for statistical analysis. So in particularly, if we talk about social sciences, then qualitative and quantitative methods both are very important, because in some subjects like economics, as I have a background of economics, then I am more fond of quantitative analysis. But many a times I use qualitative analysis too. It means that I use hybrid one. I use both of them to make inferences very clear, to make context very clear, to actually use quantitative methods in later analysis. So this is all about the social science research. I have half an hour, I think. Professor Tushar, I have half an hour.
Yes, sir. You have half an hour.
Okay,
So,
okay, okay,
if there is any question from the participants, you can ask.
okay. Is there any question till now? We'll have five. I'll leave 10 minutes for the questions, one-to-one conversation. Okay. So,
Dear participants, if you do not ask question, it will be very boring and it will be only a one-way interaction. So I
yes,
request you all to ask some questions, and the second session will be very quantitative, very technical. Okay,
yes.
this is
Second
what I
session. In
expect.
second session, we are going to have standardization of tools, and for that you should have some knowledge of quantitative and qualitative analysis. I hope this is fruitful, and let's see how it goes from here. So social science research, what social science research is, you know that natural sciences talk about their results, and the social science talk about their methods, because what method you are actually using is actually going to add value to your research. It's not like natural sciences that you experimented something, you mixed HCl with NaCl and you got something. It's not like that in social science research. So what we care about in social science research, we care about society, social problems, causes and effects, theories and explanations. Why theories? And theories, what I say, the theories are falsified, not verified, and theories are never final. So you can change the theories. A theory cannot be generalized to everywhere. Okay, it's not a law. The theory can be changed, theory can be modified, and here the role of the hypothesis is very important in social science researches. Now application is there. What application are there for quantitative data analysis is to measure differences between groups. I've already mentioned that if you want to analyze the difference of wage between males and females, then the quantitative analysis would be very helpful. If you want to exactly see what the difference is. Okay, now the second application is to assess the relationship between variables. Let's say you want to see the relationship of female labor participation with national income, then a quantitative method would be very helpful. Then third application is to test hypothesis scientifically. Now here, why we are testing hypothesis is to have a generalization, or to have a policy implications, and to strengthen our arguments. We have hypothesis testing. We make hypothesis that there is no such gender wage gap, and if there is no such gender wage gap, then we use our methods to actually test this null hypothesis, whether this null hypothesis is accepted or not accepted. And obviously it involves all statistics. You should know the basics of statistics to actually apply these measures, or to apply these tests. Here the reasoning is the key. As I already mentioned that there are two types of reasoning. One is deductive and the other one is inductive. In deductive reasoning, we start with the theory. Okay, you go for review of literature, you go for theories, you make hypotheses based on your theories, you make observations, and then you make confirmations with the help of your data. And you have assumptions here. uh, it means you are moving from general to particular. But in inductive reasoning, you make or you create theory. You first have observations, okay, then you make patterns of that, then you make hypothesis, and with the help of your data you accept or reject the hypothesis and you create a new theory. That is called generalization. So this is the basic difference between inductive and deductive reasoning. Okay. Now, there are two branches in quantitative analysis of data analysis. One is descriptive statistics and other one is inferential statistics. What is the basic difference here? The descriptive statistics focuses on describing the contents of the sample. And how would you describe the contents of the sample? By actually describing the mean, median, mode, what is the standard deviation of your data, whether there is any skewness in your data or not. So these are the descriptive statistics, typical descriptive statistics you can use in your analysis. Okay, here it is purely intended to describing the composition of the sample, how your sample is distributed, what is the mean of that, what is the median, or what is the deviation in your or variation in your data, and it is normally distributed or not, whether it is skewed or normally distributed. So these are descriptive statistics, and I advise everyone to have a descriptive statistics analysis in your research in the start of your data analysis. When you start your data analysis, you should use descriptive statistics first. Why these descriptive statistics actually matter? These will provide you a macro and micro view of the data. So how many males are there in your sample, how many females are there in your sample, okay, and what is the social status, what is the income status of your sample, how many belong them to the lower strata, how many belong to the upper strata. So this is you will have a macro and micro view of your data, and this will help in actually analyzing your results. When you analyze your results in inferential statistics, which is the second part, this will help. This micro view or macro view will help. Now, the second thing why these descriptive statistics matter is help to identify errors and anomalies in your data. So if you have any outliers, if you have any errors, then you can actually identify these errors and anomalies in your data by let's say you graph your data in XY axis, and you have an outlier. Then you can identify that outlier only by actually having a graphical representation of that. So this is called descriptive statistics. Now, the third thing is it inform which inferential statistics you will use. So on the basis of descriptive statistics, you will actually lead to which type of inferential statistics you are going to use. And inferential statistics, what inferential statistics is? Inferential statistics is actually aims to make predictions about what you would expect to find in the full population. Okay, like what predictions about differences between two or more groups. As I have already given you an example of gender wage gap. So here the two groups are males and females. Okay, one gender and the another gender. And what are the differences? So we can make predictions about differences. Then we can make predictions about relationship between two or more variables, that with the change in the structure of an economy, how labor force participation changes. So you are actually having a relationship between these two, the national income and the labor participation. So this can be done in inferential statistics. Testing hypothesis for predictions. This is the third one. Like if you make an hypothesis that there is no gender wage gap, then you collect data, you can accept or reject hypothesis, and then you can make predictions about that. Here you should be very attentive about the sampling problem. What sampling problem is, let's say you have a population that is 50% male and 50% female, and you have a sample that is 80% male and 20% female. It means you are making a sampling problem. Your sample should be the representative of your population. So if your population is having 50% male and 50% female, so in sample 2 you should have 50% male and 50% female, so that you can have data that is more reliable and stable. Okay, we will see what reliability and validity in the next session. So here you can make contributions. Let's say here we want to have some yes, are you sure enough to come to a conclusion? Now if you have a census is very tough, as we already know that in census you will have to pick each and every item in your data, and that is why we take samples, because it is very time consuming to have a census. We have every 10 years a census, and very limited data in that, because it's very costly and very time consuming. Sampling is vital for inductive logic, so that we make inferences from the sample to the population. And why these inferential statistics are there is actually to journalize the idea, because you are only having a sample from the population. Now how you can actually make predictions about the population is only by statistics, is only by inferential statistics. And here representativeness is the key. So what I have already mentioned, that you should have a sample that is representative of the population. If your population is 50% male female, then you should use a sample of 50%, and it captures sufficient variability in the characteristics that we are interested in, that is variables. Okay, and I think I have only 20 minutes and 10 minutes would be for discussion, so I'll go ahead. You should be very cautious about relationships are everywhere, so you don't actually relating the spurious thing. Be very cautious that it should make sense. If you are relating anything with anything, then this would be very problematic for you. You should relate those variables only which have an established relationship in the earlier literature also. Okay, and you should see whether it is making sense or not before you actually make a model of correlations or any cause and effect method. Okay, you should be very attentive what is your sample. Now I'll move ahead with these things. Defining the steps, you already know that what you should do. You should determine the purpose, you should design the study and select the questions. This is all about quantitative data. Okay, you are constructing a survey. If you are having a primary data, you should decide on what your population would be, and then what would be your sample. You conduct your survey, you collect the data, you analyze the data, and you report the results. Okay, and these are some data preparation techniques. I'll move ahead with this. Quantitative analysis. Now, what I have already mentioned, that descriptive statistics, what descriptive statistics are going to do is actually it refers to statistically describing, aggregating, and presenting the variables of interest. And this is all about descriptive statistics. And you can have univariate analysis, like you can have frequency distributions, like if you are actually measuring satisfaction with your life, and you can have a histogram. This is univariate analysis. You have one variable here, satisfaction with your life. Okay, on a scale of 1 to 10. So I asked you how satisfied are you with your life, scale on 1 to 10. Okay, you can have a frequency table of satisfaction. This is called univariate analysis, because I'm here having only one variable. So this is how you can actually make description, or you can have descriptive analysis. Univariate analysis can also be done using central tendency and dispersion. Like how many observations are there, what is the mean, what is the standard deviation, what is the minimum value, and what is the maximum value. So here you have age variable, which is actually having these descriptive statistics. Then you can have bivariate analysis. For bivariate analysis, correlation analysis. Yeah.
Hello,
yeah,
sir.
Yeah.
So if you want, you can, just take 5 to 10 minutes question answer session, and
Yes, yes,
we can
yes.
stop for that, because for the second session also we have to, have some content for
The
that.
second session would be from 5:30 only.
Yes, sir, 5:30.
Okay, so I'm wrapping up.
Yes, sir.
Okay, fine. Give me 2 minutes. I'm wrapping it up. Okay. In bivariate analysis, you can have also these things. Now, what I would like to mention here is very important, that in bivariate analysis, you can use these tests, t-test, ANOVA, correlation, regression analysis. In next sessions, I know that you would be having a session on regression analysis and other advanced techniques. So you would be having knowledge on these things. These are all used for bivariate analysis. Okay. Inferential statistics, you know that there is null hypothesis and an alternative hypothesis, and you use your significance testing for that, and for that you use p-value. What p-value is the probability that a statistical inference is caused by pure chance. So you can have type 1 error or type 2 error. I'll share this PPT with you. I've already shared, so you can actually have a gist of these things. Things to consider, this I wanted to actually elaborate. You should be very attentive whether your data is normally distributed or not. If your data is normally distributed, then you can use these parametric tests, what I've already mentioned, that these t-test, ANOVA, regression, and all normal OLS, or ordinary least square. But if your data is not normally distributed, then you should not use these type of tests. You should use non-parametric tests. So parametric test, non-parametric test is based on what is the distribution and what are the assumptions you have made about your data. So in parametric test, results rely on the assumptions of the shape of your distributions. Let's say you say that your data is normally distributed, then you can use parametric test. But if your data is not normally distributed and you don't have some assumptions about that, then you should not use parametric analysis or parametric test. And here it is very important to mention that we have different types of data: nominal, ordinal, interval, ratio. Then you should be very attentive the nature of your data, whether it is nominal, ordinal, interval, or ratio. The basic difference between these four is that you in all four you have categories. Okay, but you have order or rank in these three: ordinal, interval, and ratio. In these three you have orders or rank. In interval and ratio you have equal spacing. Equal spacing means from let's say from 1 degree to 2 degree there is equal spacing. 2 to 3 degree there is the difference between 1 degree. Okay, and in ratio scale or data type, you have all these things with a true zero. True zero means you can have a height of 0, you can have a weight of 0, you can have an income of 0. Okay, and but you cannot have an IQ of 0. So this will come, IQ will come in interval ratio. Okay, in ordinal you can have happiness level, satisfaction level. In nominal you can have gender, like you cannot differentiate between male and female, so this will come in nominal. So these things you should consider. Okay, thank you. Any questions? Any questions?
Yes, dear participants, if you have any questions, please let us know, because we have to start the second session at 5:30.
You can ask about your research also, because everything is would be actually in the ambit of these two, qualitative and quantitative research. So you can ask about your experience or your research, whatever you are actually having. Dr. Harsh, I think they don't have any questions. Either they have understood everything or or nothing.
I don't know. Dear participants, if you have any questions, you can let us know. You can even type your question in the chat box also.
Yes, you can type it if you.
So this is actually our general analysis that whenever the session is little theoretical, so they don't ask much questions, and when the
That is why I'm saying that they can ask on their own research, whatever they are feeling that they are actually having problems with their research. They can ask these type of questions also, because everything would be in the ambit of quantitative and qualitative.
Yes. So I think in the second section, they might be having questions when you will be dealing with the technical topics. Okay. So yesterday also the same thing happened. They had asked for the more of technical things.
Someone
Yes,
is asking, I think.
Yes, just to say, so there are so many things and so many methods and techniques we have.
Yeah.
But when we start actually working on our own research, we realize that there are so many things we can apply, sir. So that is the reason why in these kind of workshops, we hear, we listen, we know theoretically, but then we start applying, then there's a confusion happens. So maybe I think in the second session, we'll get to know a little more examples, and that will help us to ask you more questions.
Yeah, in the second session, we would be having some technical one, the validity and the reliability, the standardization of tools. And if you are having a problem dealing with your research, that which type of methods you should use, then I will suggest you to actually go through the extensive review of literature, because with the help of earlier research works, you can actually make some inference about what you should use and what you should not. So this can help you, and make notes that what earlier research works have used, which methods, which techniques they have used, which tools they have used to analyze a particular problem or a particular objective. Thank you, Jigna.
Right, sir. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Jigna madam. Okay, sir, then we can go for a break now for half an hour. So it's 4:50 in my laptop. So exactly after half an hour, that is at say 5:25, we will come back.
Okay, fine.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you, dear participants. Kindly join the meeting with the same link. Okay, this is the link will remain the same.
Okay. Thank you, Dr. Harsh. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
We can start, Suraj sir. They will join simultaneously.
Okay. So the topic of discussion for this session particularly is the standardization of tools, and in this particular session we would be actually going to define what reliability is, what validity is, and how we can actually test reliability and validity. The role of these tests or these standardization tools is very crucial. Particularly, we talk about social sciences, because here in social sciences, many a times we don't have measures, or we don't have variables that can be directly measured, and we measure a particular variable with the help of some items, with the help of some questions to come to a conclusion. Let's say, I'll give you an example that let's say you want to have a measurement of self-esteem. Let's say you want to measure IQ. Then let's say you want to measure happiness or subjective well-being. then you cannot directly measure subjective well-being, happiness, or particularly if I say, to actually come to a conclusion or to make a scale of happiness, to make a scale of subjective well-being and so on. So you need these items. Then with the help of these items, reaching to your conclusion or making a measure of, let's say, subjective well-being, so you will have to be very attentive whether these items are actually measuring whatever you are measuring. It means the questions you have taken are actually measuring subjective well-being or not. Then if you want to answer these type of questions, then you should know about the standardization of tools, and you should know about the reliability and validity of your tools. So I'll start with my PPT. I'll share my PPT, and I cannot share the screen. Professor Tushar, you have disabled the thing. Can you make me co-host so that I can share my PPT?
Yes, sir. Just a second. Just a
Okay, okay. In between, what we are actually going to have is uh, the outline is like we are going to define reliability, and we are going to have some approaches to test reliability. Then we'll move ahead to validity. We'll define validity, what validity is, and then we'll approach how to actually get what validity is, whether our tools are valid or not, whether our methods are valid or not.
Sorry to interrupt, Suraj sir. You can present now because I think आपने left किया था इसके लिए co-host भी गया
Okay,
था.
okay, okay.
Present कर दीजिए.
Yeah, fine. Is it? Can everyone see that?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Fine, fine, fine. So the outline is like this. We'll have to define reliability, different types of reliability, and how to test it. Then we'll go to validity with the same approach. Now, as I have discussed a little bit, that measurement involves assigning scores to individuals, scores to participants, so that they represent some characteristics. Some characteristics of what? Some characteristics of individual. Now, but how do researchers know that these scores actually represent the characteristics? As I've already given you an example, let's say you want to measure well-being, subjective well-being, and you are asking some questions on well-being. Okay, now whether the researcher, how the researchers would know that these scores, what he's actually gathering the data on, actually represents subjective well-being. So these questions, and especially when it is a construct, like you can say intelligence quotient. Let's say you are measuring IQ. Let's say you are measuring depression. Let's say you are measuring anxiety. Then whether your items or whether your questions are actually representing the characteristics of the individuals or not. So this is always a burning question in social science researchers, particularly in researchers like where you have construct. Construct means it's like a latent variable that which you cannot directly measure, but you can actually measure it with some items or with some scales. So you try to actually have more and more questions on that particular area so that you can understand whether what subjective well-being is. Okay, you can ask about health and well-being. You can ask about psychological situation and well-being. You can talk about his social capital and well-being. So this is how well-being can be actually measured, but there is no such concrete formula for actually assessing or for actually measuring subjective well-being. So you should be very careful when you are measuring something with other items. And these constructs like intelligence, self-esteem, depression, all these actually involves assigning scores to individuals. Now, how actually you will do that, or what is the answer for that? The answer is that they conduct, the researchers conduct research using the measure to confirm that the scores make sense based on their understanding of the construct being measured. So whatever you are measuring, it will be based on your assumption that this construct will work or not, whether this is valid or consistent measure of something or not. So here the objective is to obtain information that is most reliable and valid. From valid, what I mean, from valid, I mean this should be accurate. Okay, whatever you are measuring should be accurate. And what does it mean by reliable? It should be consistent. It means whatever you are measuring, the repeated measures should give the same results. We'll get to know about these things uh, in a comprehensive manner in subsequent slides. Then you can understand it very well. Now, when you have surveys or questionnaires, then in survey and questionnaires, when you're asking questions in surveys, you should be very cautious about the validity and reliability of your questions. It means the accuracy and consistency of your question. We measure variables or characteristics of individuals or groups by assigning scores to them. We give scores to them. Let's suppose we are asking questions like, imagine you are or you have been dieting for a month, okay, and your clothes seems to be fitting loose, okay, seems to be fitting more loosely, and your friends have asked if you have lost weight. Your friends are asking you if you have lost weight because your dress is fitting you more loose. Okay. Now, if at this point you actually wait if you actually weight your with your machine indicating that you had lost 5 kgs, let's say you have lost 5 kgs, this would make sense, okay, because you know that you have been dieting for a month. Now your shirt or your pant is now fitting loose to you, and your friends have already mentioned that thing, that are you been dieting or have you lost your weight, and the weighing machine is telling the same thing, that you have lost 5 kgs. Now you would be actually continuing to use this scale, because now you are you are you know that this weighing machine is actually giving the right results. But think about that situation, if it wouldn't have shown that 5 kg loss weight, then you would be amazed and you would be thinking that this might be this weighing machine is not working well. It means you have got an idea or you have got something out of the data that you should not use this weighing machine very regularly, because it is not giving you reliable results or consistent results. Okay. And uh, one example for validity, let's say you have fever, and you are measuring your fever with a BP monitor. Then would it be would be good to use a BP monitor to measure a thermometer? Obviously, no. For thermometer, the use of thermometer is to actually measure the temperature of your body. So you are not actually using the right measure or right method or right tool. So this won't be a valid one, because you will not get something out of it. So when do you know the scores actually represent the characteristics? So you will have to confirm that the scores make sense. For example, you are measuring well-being, happiness, social capital, intelligence, depression, then you should be aware of this thing, that you are measuring the same thing. Now, how will you do that? The first and foremost thing in the standardization of tools is reliability. What reliability is? Reliability concerns the extent to which a measurement of a phenomenon provides stable and consistent results. So here the two things are there, stable and consistent results. For example, let's say BP monitoring apparatus. Okay, if BP monitoring apparatus, you are using BP monitoring apparatus, and at one point of time you used it and you write down your readings. Again, after 10 to 15 minutes, you wrote down. Again, after 15 to 20 minutes, you wrote down the data. Now you see whether these results are stable and consistent. If you are getting the same results with very minor fluctuations again and again, it means your BP monitoring apparatus or your tool is reliable, because it is giving you stable and consistent results. If it is not, then your BP monitoring apparatus is not working well, and you should avoid the use of this BP monitoring machine. Okay. Now, it is also concerned with repeatability. Why I'm using this word repeatability is because, for example, let's say a scale or test is said to be reliable if repeated measures made by it under constant conditions will give the same results. So if all things are constant, then this apparatus or this tool, if used many times or if we measure repeatedly, will give the same results. So this will be called that, okay, the reliability is there with that particular tool. And I hope consistency, you have already got what the word mean consistent. Now, reliability is an indication of the consistency of scores. Over time, it means between 2 point of times, across different items or tasks, or between scores that measure the same thing. And based on these three, you have different types of consistency. If your measure is reliable, obviously you are going to decrease error in the measuring of your phenomena, particularly let's say a test or a scale. So if you are increasing reliability in the measurement by your monitor, by your tool, it means your measurement of phenomena would be very consistent, would be very accurate, would be very stable. Now, if the consistency is over time, that is called test retest reliability to measure stability. So in reliability, we have three different types of consistency. To measure stability, we use test retest reliability. The second one is internal consistency, that is done across items. Let's say you want to have you want to measure well-being, and you are measuring well-being with the factors, let's say psychological factors are there, health factors are there, social factors are there, how these factors are actually influencing well-being. So across items, there should be consistency, there should be correlations, then only your measure would be reliable. It means you are using the same items to measure the same thing. Whatever you are trying to measure, you are measuring the same thing, not the other thing. If you are trying to measure well-being, then your item should be measuring well-being only, not depression or anxiety. Okay, so well-being, well-being. If you are measuring well-being, your item should be measuring well-being, not the other thing. If you are measuring, let's say you are measuring well-being and you are focusing more on happiness, then there would be problem. There would be reliability problem, because internal consistency wouldn't be there. The third one is inter-rater reliability, or many a times it is called equivalence, and it is across different researchers. So here you have different point of time. Here you have different items, and here you have different observers or researchers. Okay, so these three types of consistency are there. Now we'll take one by one. First one is test retest reliability. What test retest reliability is? When researchers measure a construct, I've already mentioned what construct is. Let's say well-being is a construct. So well-being is measured through different items, because well-being is cannot be measured directly. You directly cannot measure how much subjective well-being are you, है ना? How happy are you these days. So these type of questions, maybe there would be no such reliability. But if you measure happiness by many items, if you measure well-being by many items, then it would be reliable. Now, when researchers measure a construct that they assume to be consistent across time, I am mentioning again, then the scores they obtain should also be consistent across time. Okay, let's say you are measuring intelligence score. Okay, and you measured the intelligence score of 10 students in a particular time period, let's say time 1. And in time 2, after let's say 1 week, you measuring the same intelligence score for the same 10 participants. And if these scores are correlated, or there is consistency in the scores, then we'll say that the test retest reliability is there. Okay, for example, intelligence is generally thought to be consistent across time. So here you would be using those type of variables which are actually consistent across time. Okay, you don't have to use here mood, because like let's say what is your mood today, so your mood can be changed very quickly sometimes. So in test retest reliability, you are not going to use those type of variables which change very quickly. So only those characteristics which are stable over time are actually measured here, like intelligence score. IQ doesn't change overnight. Okay, well-being doesn't change overnight. Job satisfaction doesn't change overnight. So these type of variables are those type of variables which actually thought to be consistent across time. So you can use test retest reliability in these type of variables. Now a person who is highly intelligent today will be highly intelligent next week also. This means that any good measure of intelligence, if you are measuring intelligence score with a measure, should produce roughly the same scores for this individual, that particular individual, next week as it does today. So if it is not giving the same results, or approximately same results, it means there is no test retest reliability, and it means your items are actually not measuring the same thing, or your item measurings are, whatever you are measuring is not stable over time. It requires using the measure on a group at one point of time and using it again on the same group at a later time. And how would you approach for that? You will take the correlation between this test and retest scores. So whatever you have got in first or in one point of time, and you got data on the other point of time, now you will have a Carl Pearson coefficient of correlation, and you will see what is the value of this correlation. Or you can do the same thing with the scatter plot also. If you are plotting the same thing and the dots are overlapping each other, then you will get to know that yes, okay, the test reliability is good. Now here the thumb rule is the correlation coefficient should be more than 0.8. Okay, if it is positive and more than 0.8, then it indicates that there is good reliability. More than 0.9 indicates a very good reliability, excellent reliability. Now let's see an example. In time 1, I have IQ scores for 10 participants, and in time 2, I have IQ scores for these participants. So time 1, time 2, I've already mentioned that this time should not be very high point of time. Like it means like if you're taking time 1 in 2009 March, and then you see after 1 year, then this wouldn't work. Okay, so this should be a shorter time period. Now you see for participant 1, the time, the IQ score is 100, and here in time 2, 101, 115, 14, actually just as the same, 102, 98, 99, this, and so on. And if you have this as X series, this is as Y series, then you can calculate the correlation or Karl Pearson's correlation coefficient. And particularly for this data, if you calculate, you will get a coefficient of 0.99. And as you see that scores are clustering together very closely. So when the scores are clustering very closely, it means you are having a high R or high correlation coefficient, and that is mean that your retest reliability is very good. On the other hand, if scores vary widely between 2 times periods, then correlation will be very weak, or it will be negative. Maybe it can go negative, and we conclude that the scale test is not stable. So always remember that this should be positive and should be at least more than 0.8 for having a test retest reliability. I hope you understood what test retest reliability is. Any question in test retest reliability? No? Fine. I'll move to internal consistency. What internal consistency is? Now, testing for reliability is important as it refers to the consistency across the parts of a measuring instruments. As I already mentioned, this would be across items. So whatever you are measuring with the help of some parts, with help of some items, with the help of some questions, so there should be consistency in between these items also. A scale is said to have high internal consistency reliability if the items of a scale hang together and measure the same construct. It means if you are having questions on, let's say you are making a measurement for depression, okay, and you want to measure depression among students because of the online teaching. Now you should have items or questions only based on depression. It means measuring depression only. If you are having items which are not measuring depression, then your measurement or your construct wouldn't be good, and there wouldn't be internal consistency. So for internal consistency, you should know that your items of a scale are hanging together. It means measuring the same thing what you are intended to measure. Okay, so that is why I have mentioned here, this is the method of estimating whether different parts of a test are measuring the same thing or variable or not. Like test retest reliability, internal consistency can only be assessed by collecting and analyzing data. Okay, you can do it by collecting and analyzing data, and one approach is there which is called split half correlation. And the advanced one is Cron-Bash's alpha. Many researchers nowadays use Cron-Bash's alpha to actually measure this internal consistency. What split half method is and what Cron-Bash alpha is, you see here. In a split half method, what we do, let's say we have 20 questions to measure well-being. Different 20 questions to measure subjective well-being. What we can do, we can divide these items, these 20 questions in two half. Split half means to make two groups. Okay, so you can make two groups of 20 questions, 10. So 10 questions in one group, 10 questions in second group. So you can take it by order. Even you can have first or second half, or you can have first, third, fifth in the first group, and then second, fourth or sixth in the second group. And now what you do, you will have to take the correlation of these two groups. If the Karl Pearson correlation coefficient is high, then you say that yes, internal consistency is there, and all these 20 questions are actually measuring the same thing. If they are not actually measuring the same thing, then this correlation wouldn't be high, or this can be very low. Now what Cron-Bash alpha is Cron-Bash alpha. Here you have a split half method, or you have, let's say you have odd or even or first half and second half. But in Cron-Bash alpha, you take all these possibilities with the help of a software statistical package. You take all the items and you make groups of all permutations and combinations, and then you calculate a correlation coefficient that is called Cron-Bash alpha. And what Cron-Bash alpha actually is going to do, the Cron-Bash alpha is most commonly used internal consistency measure, and it is extent to which the items in a scale measure the same phenomenon. Same phenomenon means same thing or same variable, and the extent to which the scale hangs together. It means the cluster should be there. They should cluster together. Okay. Now, I'll give you an example from Pontin et al., which was published in Health and Quality of Life Outcomes. And in that, the authors actually calculated subjective well-being or measured subjective well-being. So here your construct is subjective well-being, and it is on a scale of 5-point Likert scale. So the middle one is neutral, the lowest one, and the highest one. So, and these are the questions. You see, these are total 20 questions. So the questions are on physical health, how your physical health is, your quality of sleep, ability to perform, and so on. As you see by the colors, these orange colors questions are on psychological well-being. Okay, depressed or not, you are enjoying your life or not, do you have purpose in life or not, are you optimistic or not, and so on. So this is called a factor. This psychological well-being is actually measuring the subjective well-being, because this construct have different factors. This construct, which is called subjective well-being, have different factors like psychological well-being, physical health and well-being, and relationships, which is also called social capital. Okay, so these are three factors. This is construct, and these are your items. Okay, these are your items. Now you see that this is these questions in orange are measuring psychological well-being, these in blue are measuring physical health and well-being, and these in green are measuring relationships. Now all these three factors are actually measuring subjective well-being. It means all these 24 questions first measuring subjective well-being, and particularly measuring different aspects of well-being. So what should be the Cron-Bash alpha for that? The Cron-Bash alpha or split half, split in a split half, what you can do, you can have these first half and second half, and then you can actually take the correlation. Now in Cron-Bash alpha would be calculated with the help of any statistical software, and it will take all the permutation and combinations. And for 24 items scale, if you see, the Cron-Bash alpha is 0.94, which is very high. Above 0.9 is very excellent internal consistency. So for 24 items means these all 424 items are whether these 24 items measuring subjective well-being or not. If they are not measuring subjective well-being, this Cron-Bash alpha for 24 items would be very low, but it is very good, 0.94, which is telling you that internal consistency is very good. Now for particular factors, if you see, so psychological factor F1, and for psychological factors, which items are there? The items are in orange, as you see these orange items. So these orange items and the factor 1 is the Cron-Bash alpha between them is 0.93. This is the subscale for this. So here too you see the Cron-Bash alpha is very high, more than 0.9. For F2, it means physical health and well-being. This is 0.8, which is also good, because above 0.7, 0.8, we call it a good Cron-Bash alpha or good internal consistency. But for 0.9 and above, we say it very good or excellent internal consistency, as you see all these items. So I hope you understood what internal consistency is, and how you can actually measure internal consistency. The most commonly used tool is Cron-Bash alpha for actually calculating internal consistency. Now we'll come to third type of reliability, which is also called equivalence, and many a times called inter-rater reliability. What rater here means is an observer or a judge. Okay. Now, if I talk about inter-rater reliability, then many behavioral measures involve significant judgment, okay, on the part of an observer or a rater. For example, let's say if you were interested in measuring university students' social skills, let's say, and you could make video recording of them, and they interacted with another student. Then you could have two or more observers. Those observers will watch these videos whether this student who were to measure the social skills, then these observers will see the video and they will point out how many social skills this student has, and with the help of the interactions with other students. Let's say, for example, surgical dressing skills. So one person is actually observing two students of pharma, that whether they are dressing skills are good or not. So they what they will do, they will just give scores to them. Now we'll see whether these scores are actually correlating with each other or not. So two similar forms of the same test taken by the same individual, or the two different assessments, whether these two different assessments or ratings are consistent or not. So this, if they are consistent, it means we say that this test or whatever we are using the test is reliable. Now, how will you calculate? Here you will calculate it by this formula: number of agreements divided by number of agreements plus number of disagreements. And here the denominator is actually telling you the number of possible agreements. So number of possible agreements can be the whole of the sample. It means, let's say you have 10 ratings, then in all 10 ratings, maybe there should be agreement. So 10 would be the base and number of agreements would be the numerator. Now we'll see it by an example. If you see this example, let's say two examiners are measuring universities students' social skills, and every skill observed is given 1 point. If they observe that yes, this is the skill, they will give you 1 point by watching a video of 10 respondents. So like here, the examiner 1 and examiner 2 are giving scores to 10 different participants. Now see examiner 1 and examiner 2. For this one, this is matching, matching, matching. Here it's not matching, 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 not matching, 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 matching. Now, what are the total number of agreements? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8. And what are the possible number of agreements? Possible may be only 10. Number of agreements plus number of disagreements mean 8 plus 2, and this is 0.8. So everything that is 0.8 or above is a good measure. So we can say that here the two raters are giving the same results or agreeing on the same thing. It means whatever we are measuring or the reliability of this test is good. So this is called test retest reliability. Any questions in test retest reliability? Anyone? Because this is all about reliability, and now we'll move ahead to validity. Should I move to validity? Any yes or no?
Yes, sir.
Okay, okay. Now we'll move ahead to validity. One thing more, that for this equivalence and inter-rater reliability, you can also use advanced tests, which are actually used in structural equation modeling and confirmatory factor analysis. So now the researchers are actually using CFA and structural equation modeling to actually test the equivalence reliability, or you can say test retest reliability. How they do it is with the different types of tests. Like one of them is Satora-Bantler chi-square test to see the fit of the model. Then robust comparative fit index, RCFI, to check the fit of the model, and RMSEA, that is root mean square error of approximation. The value should be less than 0.06. And you can have an example of equivalence from the earlier. Please mute yourself. Okay, now with this example, I've shown you this example of measuring subjective well-being. Now, how you will check the equivalence, or how will check the equivalence reliability from this? You can divide your sample into two different portions, one for males and one for females. Now, for males, subjective well-being. What is subjective well-being for males? Whether these items are actually measuring subjective well-being of male, and with the same items, what is the level of subjective well-being for females. Now, equivalence, what equivalence will check that whether the gender subsets are showing the same thing. If they are showing the same things, then it means equivalence of parameters are there, because there is no such gender disparity in your reliability test. Okay. Now we'll move ahead to validity. Now, after reliability, you should also check whether your tools are valid or not. And validity explains how well the collected data covers the actual area of investigation. It is actually basically means measure what is intended to be measured. So whatever you are measuring or you intend to measure, you are measuring the same thing or not. Whether you are measuring let's say you are measuring subjective well-being, and you are not with your items, you are actually not measuring subjective well-being, that this tool wouldn't be valid. Okay. But how do researchers actually make that judgment? We have already considered one factor, that is reliability, but there has to be more to it. Okay, you will have to go beyond this reliability check, because a measure can be extremely reliable but have no validity. So you can have a very good test retest reliability, you can have very good internal consistency, but maybe you are using the thing that is not valid. Okay, you are using BP monitor to check the thermometer, to check the temperature, then it wouldn't be valid. Okay. For example, I'll give you one absurd example to make you understand the thing. Now, imagine someone who believes that people's index finger, I hope you know what index finger is. Index finger length relates to their or reflects their self-esteem. So the length of index finger, whether it is reflecting the self-esteem of peoples or not, and therefore tries to measure the self-esteem by holding a ruler, okay, ruler up to people's index fingers. So what he's doing, or he or she is doing, measuring the length of index finger, and then measuring the self-esteem by holding this thing. Okay. Now, what does it mean? It means that if your index finger is let's say 1 inch more than the other, then you have more self-esteem than the other. Is it making any sense? Is it making any sense to you that I'm measuring self-esteem by the length of my index finger, or by the length of the index finger of individuals? Obviously no. Obviously no. So from this you would be telling that this is not a valid measure to valid item or valid scale or valid test to measure the self-esteem. For measuring self-esteem, you should have questions which are actually measuring self-esteem. Then you would be able to actually tell the reviewers that your study is valid and you have used valid tools. Okay, so it explains how well the collected data covers the actual area of investigation. What actually you are investigating is telling what you are actually having in your box, in your item box. And it is one step ahead to reliability, as I can mention that this is much more than the reliability. Okay, now in this reliability type, we have different types of validity. The first one is face validity. Okay, now what face validity is? Face validity is a subjective judgment, as you can see by the name, face validity. You see it and you make judgments. Okay, you see the structure on its face and then you decide whether this is valid or not. So what you are doing actually, you are making only subjective judgment. You are not actually using numerics here. Okay, on the operationalization of a construct, whatever construct you are making or whatever structure you made, you are actually measuring it by its face. Okay, now I'll give you an example. Let's see, let's say you want to buy a car. Okay, and when you go to buy a car, you just see the color and you just see the shape of the car, how it looks like. So this is called the measuring the item on its face. Okay, but on the other hand, let's say the other person is there with you and he is much more interested in the performance of that car, the internal seating arrangement of the car, or let's say he is much more interested in the engine. Okay, how the engine will work and what average will average the car will give on 1 liter petrol. Okay, so that is very different from face validity. That is called content validity. So we will understand what content validity is. First we will stick to face validity. Now a test has face validity if its content simply looks relevant to you. Okay, if it's look relevant, okay, you have taken the right things, and okay you take it, you taken the things which are measuring depression, and for measuring depression you have used this items, so it looks all good. So that is called face validity. Fine. It evaluates the appearance of the questionnaire in terms of feasibility, in terms of readability, in terms of consistency of style, formatting, and clarity of language you used, the thoughts you portrayed in your introduction or in your review of literature or in your research methodology section. So this is face validity. When you will say that the validity is poor, that poor face validity means you are measuring a thing with wrong items. As already mentioned, that if you are measuring your temperature with BP monitor, then it is looking at your poor face validity. So face validity can be measured quantitatively or many a times informally. So researchers have done a lot to do this, and they have made a quantitative analysis for you to actually measure the face validity. But for that you need observers, you need reviewers to review your research work, to review your research design, whether there is face validity or not. And those peer reviewers would be the experts of that area. Let's suppose you are measuring self-esteem, and you sent your questionnaire, or you sent your draft to observers or peer reviewers to see whether it is valid by its face or not. Okay, and for that you have Cohen's kappa index, which is called CKI. And Cohen's kappa statistics is used to measure the level of agreement between two raters. As I already mentioned, you will have to send your draft to two judges or two raters, two or more raters, who each classify items into mutually exclusive categories. Okay, And mutually exclusive means there should be no overlapping. Okay, and this is the formula. Small k is equal to PO minus PE divided by 1 minus PE. What PO is here is a relative observed agreement among raters. How many the two raters on how many agreements are there, and P is hypothetical probability of chance agreement. Okay, the value would be between 0 and 1, obviously 0 indicating no agreement and near to 1 indicating good agreement, or 1 indicating perfect agreement between the two raters. I'll give you an example. By that you can actually understand how to calculate Cohen's-Kappa index. Let's say two museum curators are asked to rate 70 paintings. Okay, there are 70 paintings in a museum, and two curators are there, and they are making judgments on whether these 70 paintings are good enough to be hung in a new exhibition or not. Okay, now rater 1 say yes or no for these items, rater 2 say yes or no for these items. This is 2 cross 2 table. And here how you will calculate PO, you will have to calculate PO and PE, remember that. So for PO you will use both said yes. How many times both said yes plus both said no, and you will divide it by total ratings. Okay, so how you can calculate both said yes for 25 paintings, both said yes, these 25 paintings are good enough to be hung in a new exhibition. So 25 plus both said no. For 20 paintings they said no, both of them said no, these 20 paintings are not good enough to be hung in a exhibition. So 25 plus 20 divided by 70, and you will have this much 0.64. Then how you will calculate PE? For calculating PE, you will have to calculate chances of yes and chances of no, because PE is what? PE is hypothetical probability of chance agreement. So for that, you will have to take a chance of yes and take a chance of no. For take a chance of yes, what will you do? Both said yes, both said yes, and sorry, rater 1 said yes, rater 1 said no, divided by total ratings, and you will multiply it by this both rater 2 said yes and rater 2 said yes. So for yes you will use only this one, this column and this column. Yes, sorry, as you see, for rater 1 25 plus 10 divided by 70. For rater 2 say yes, 25 plus 15 divided by 70. And like that, you will have a chance for no. So for no, you will have this one and this one. For rater 1, 15 plus 20 divided by 70. And for rater 2, 10 plus 20 divided by 70. You will have something, and you will add those these two chances, and you will get 0.5. Now K can be calculated with this formula. PO minus PE divided by 1 minus PE, and ultimately you will get this number. And this K is actually very low. It means that the face validity of this measure is not good, because here you see the agreements are actually indicating no agreement between the two raters. Okay, or very less agreement between the two raters. Fine.
So, sir, there is one question in the chat box.
Yes, fine. I'll see that. Oh, not valid. Is face validity tested based on qualitative reviews in case of testing face validity of questionnaire? Yes, both. What I have already mentioned is that these are totally depending upon the views of reviewers. So whatever you feel that this person is actually is an expert of this area, you send that person your questionnaire or your draft to have the validity. So that is why I'm saying that the face validity need not be taken to quantitative analysis. You can have face validity by actually sending your drafts to experts and having their notes. This is all can be done to actually have face validity. Okay. And how you can do this face validity? You can do it by reviews also. If you have reviewed literature very well, then you can relate your review of literature with your measurement, and by that you can actually have face validity. Okay. So this you can do, and obviously this is qualitative tool that is highly reliable, nearby zero point 0.9, but not validity mentioned at all research purpose. Yes, sure. Shelke Santosh ji, as I already mentioned, that many a times you can have a reliable tool, but that wouldn't be valid all the time. So you should be very cautious about using a reliable and valid one, because validity is much more important than the reliability. First of all, you should be valid. You should be using the right thing for right measurement. Then only you can say that whether this is repeatedly giving good measurement or not, whether this is internal consistent or not. Then only you can go for that. That is why I told you that this is much more than the reliability. Okay, validity is much more than the reliability. And thank you for your question. I hope everyone got it. What face validity is. Now I'll come to content validity, the second type of validity. What content validity is? Content validity is the extent to which a measure covers the construct of interest. Okay. As I already mentioned in the previous one, the example, let's say you are going to buy a car, and the other person was actually interested in the engine, in the average performance of the car, and the internal seating arrangement of the car, not only on the look. So what that researcher or what that observer is doing is covering all the things. Okay. And this is called content validity. So you are actually interested in the content, not only on the face of it. So what content validity is? It is assessed by carefully checking the measurement method against the conceptual definitions of the construct. In the last session, ma'am, someone asked that what is the role of conceptual framework in actually deciding what to use and what not to use, whether to use quantitative analysis or qualitative methodology. So this is the answer, that when you are doing content validity, so what actually you are doing, you are conceptually defining your construct. If you have made this thing very accurately, then half of the task is done. It means you have gone to the right thing. You have taken the valid measurement of for measuring your construct, and now you can go ahead. What you have to do just now, just collect the data and go for the second inning. That is your quantitative data analysis. It means qualitatively you have gathered so many things. Okay, so content analysis is all about that, making conceptual definitions of the construct. Whatever you are measuring, you will have to make a conceptual definition of that, that why you are using these items to measure subjective well-being. Okay, and that can be done with the help of reviews, the earlier published works in reputed journals. I'm not saying take everything, but take the journals which are reputed ones, which are actually showing the right results, not everything. Okay. Now, for example, I'll give you an example. Let's say you have a 10-question customer satisfaction survey. Okay, you want to have a customer satisfaction survey with 3 questions that test for overall satisfaction with the telephonic service. Sorry. So in customer survey or in customer satisfaction survey, you want to touch a particular service that is called telephonic service. How you actually give services on telephone. Okay, now testing those 3 questions for satisfaction with telephonic service is an example for checking the internal consistency. Remember internal consistency? You are measuring the same thing with the reliable items, whether you are using reliable items to measure the thing or not. So here, if you are using these 3 questions to actually measure telephonic service, then it is okay. And taking the whole survey, would it be good? Taking the whole survey and making sure it measures customer satisfaction would be an example of content validity, whether you are using the same thing or not. I hope you understood the thing. So internal consistency, content validity, all are very clustered together. If you are content, if your content is valid, then it would be there would be very high chance that there would be internal consistency, because you are taking the right items to measure the right things. Okay, so here not usually assessed quantitatively. Okay, this content validity is usually not assessed quantitatively, as I have already mentioned that you will have to use your conceptual framework or conceptual definitions to actually come to a conclusion whether your content is valid or not. Instead, it is assessed by carefully checking the measurement method, like what methods you are using against the conceptual definitions of the construct. So if you are using a very different thing which is not there in the literature, okay, the literature has used psychological factors, has used health factors, and has used relationships or social capital to measure subjective well-being, and you are using anything else to measure well-being, then obviously the content validity wouldn't be there. Okay, so you will have to make your conceptual framework like that, so that it looks like your face validity is there, your content validity is there, and it involves intense literature review and evaluation by experts. That is why whenever you send a paper to a journal, you should before you send it to the journal, you should send it to your supervisor and some known persons who can actually give you validation on its face or on its content. Okay, the other things you can do by the calculations by using the software, but this cannot be done by any software. Like earlier you have seen the kappa index. This kappa index cannot be calculated in actually in practice. Okay, in application you cannot calculate it. This is not the use for research, but for quantitatively, if you want to use that, no, I will use kappa index, then you can use it, but that would be depending upon your research question, your research area. Any questions? Sir, is item analysis important for a better validity score? Yes, obviously. These items, if these items are correlating, or if these items are actually measuring the same thing, what you are intended to measure, then there would be internal consistency, okay, and content validity also. So if your content is valid, then for sure you are going to have an internal consistency. There is no such problem. Yes, Sumitha said that Cohen's kappa is calculated in SPSS under cross tabs. Yes, you can calculate. That is why I told that you can calculate everything. But do you want to calculate everything for actually having a face validity? When the name is face validity, then it should look like face. It should look from the face only, na? Whether it is okay or not. If I'm not wrong, if the results are in the form of contingency table, I may be wrong also. Yes, in contingency table it can have, but always remember that the kappa index will only work if you have mutually exclusive cross tabs. Mutually exclusive cross tab means there should be no overlapping of the cells. I hope I have given the answer. Okay, thank you. Now, as you wanted it, you wanted a quantitative one, so you can also use Lash's content validity ratio. There is so much things, those who want to quantify the things, they can have content validity ratio with this formula CVR, which was developed by Loshe in 1975, and this is the formula, NE minus n by 2 divided by n by 2. What n is here? N is the total number of panel members. How many panel members are there? And n is the number of panel members indicating essential. So let's say you have you given it to 5 panelists, okay, and your draft you sent your draft to 5 panelists, okay. So here the number is n is 5, okay, and ne is the number of panel members indicating essential, okay. It means they said that okay, this is essential, fine, this is good. So this is how CVR is calculated, okay. Now NE is the number of panel members indicating this is very good, and n by 2 is if your number of panelists is 5, then your minimum value should be 0.99. So the CVR should be very high. If you have 30 panelists, then you can actually have a CVR of 0.33, then it's okay, content validity is there. So if you are having number of panelists, increasing number of panelists, then you can have a minimum value, lesser minimum value of CVR. And this is how you can calculate Losch's content validity ratio. I think there is no need to calculate it. And if you are sending it to panel members, and panel members are saying that yes, you have done good thing, then it's okay. You don't have to calculate CVR for that. Okay. Now, continuing with this thing of content analysis, in order to apply content validity, following steps are followed, and these steps are taken from the study of Tahar 2015. What you should do, you should first do an exhaustive literature review, okay, to extract the related items, to extract the theme, to extract the patterns from this. A content validity survey is generated. Each item is assessed using 3 points scale, not necessarily useful, but not essential and essential. Okay, so a content validity survey, you can do that. You can have Losch's content validity ratio. The survey should send to the experts in the same field of the research. This is I already mentioned, and you should do this. You can also calculate CVR. Items that are not significant at the critical level are eliminated. If you have got the suggestions that you should not use this item, you should remove those items, because an expert is asking you to remove that. And if you don't want to remove that item, you should have a clear understanding of that, and you should have a backup of review of literature to use that particular item. If you you have shown in your conceptual framework that earlier studies have used this item, then you should use that. There is no such problem in that. Okay, so these are the steps to actually check for content validity. Okay, Anupa madam is asking, sir, I made literature review through rephrasing software is valid. Rephrasing, okay. Madam, it's valid until the what I say, the soul of the idea is there, because many a times what actually rephrasing do, it ruin the idea. What you want to portray is actually not portraying with rephrasing the words. So whenever you rephrase it, you just go through it 1 or 2 times, because it will change the idea. The rephrasing will change the idea. Whatever you have written is based on your views or your perceptions, and the software is not knowing what you are thinking. So you should rephrase it, but rephrase it very carefully, I would suggest. Fine, now we'll come to construct validity, the third type of validity. And what construct validity is, as the name goes, construct validity refers to how well you translated or transformed a concept or an idea or behavior, that is a construct, into a functioning and operating reality. So whatever you are making, okay, with the help of your items, let's suppose you are making a construct, let's say subjective well-being. Okay, so whatever you are measuring, it should be functioning or operating reality. It should not be only an idea. Okay. So whatever you are measuring or whatever you are actually translating or transforming, then your concept, your idea, it should be a functioning concept. It should be a functioning or operating concept. Okay. Now I'll give you an example. Now this construct validity demonstrate that test is actually measuring the construct it claims it's measuring. Okay. If I'm claiming that I'm measuring subjective well-being, then my items should be measuring the same thing. In the social sciences particularly, if I say, there is a lot of subjectivity. Okay. In social sciences, you don't have data. You many a times you have subjectivity. There is no such objectivity in many social science subjects. Okay. When that is a case, most constructs have no real unit of measurement. Now, if I say subjective well-being, how to measure subjective well-being, then one person will say you should take this thing. The other person will say you should involve this thing in subjective well-being. The third person will say, no, you should also involve this thing in subjective well-being. This is called subjectivity. Okay. And construct validity is actually helping to remove these type of subjectivity blocks. Okay. Now, even those constructs that do have an acceptable measurement scale, like IQ. If you see, for measuring IQ, you have most reliable or most valid measurement tools. You have a unit for that, for actually checking the IQ. But even now, if you see, most of the studies are now taking new and new dimensions to check IQs. So it means that IQ is not particularly having a perfect real unit of measurement. So in particularly in social science, this construct validity is very important, because whenever you are making latent variables or construct for your research study or for your research work, you should be very cautious about what you are actually measuring and by what you are measuring that thing of interest. Okay. Now, construct validity has two types: discriminant validity and convergent validity. What discriminant validity is? Discriminant validity is the extent to which latent variable latent variable means latent variable is a variable that cannot be directly measured. This is measured through some items. Okay. So if I say subjective well-being, if I say happiness, if I say depression or anxiety, I cannot calculate anxiety directly with a measure. Okay. I will have some items and I'll ask some questions. Then I will come to a conclusion whether the person is depressed or not, whether the person is having a problem of anxiety or not. Okay. So discriminant validity is the extent to which latent variable A, let's say this variable, latent variable A is depression, discriminates from another latent variables, let's say anxiety, let's say well-being, let's say happiness. Okay. So that is why it is called discriminant. It means you will have to discriminate between two latent variables. Okay. It means that a latent variable is able to account for more variances in the observed variables associated with it only. Okay. Now, let's suppose I'm measuring subjective well-being with the help of psychological situations on well-being, health and well-being, and let's say relationships and well-being. And now well-being. Now I'm measuring well-being with a measure of depression, or with a measure of anxiety, or with a measure of happiness. Then it means the measure should be different. If they are not discriminated, then there is no such discriminant validity. I'll give you an example of that later. First of all, understand what convergent validity is. Convergent validity is very different from discriminant validity. It refers to constructs that are expected to be related are in fact related. Okay. It means they are converging. to a point. The degree to which two measures of construct that theoretically should be related are in fact related. That is called convergent validity. And for these type of validity, you use principal component analysis, that is called PCA, or you can have regression analysis. Both will work. Now see the example. I hope you can see this. Is this visible? Is this figure visible to you?
Yes, sir.
Fine, fine. So this figure is taken from the same study of Pontin 2015, Pontin et al. And you see here, what I'm measuring here, I'm measuring subjective well-being. And the subjective well-being is measured through these three factors: psychological well-being, physical health and well-being, and relationships. So these are three factors, and you can say these are latent variables. Why I'm saying these are latent variables? Because these are not directly measured. These are measured through different items. These are the different items from which they are measured. So for psychological well-being, I have questions on, and are you enjoying your life or not? Do you have purpose in life or not? And so on. For physical health, I'm asking him about his physical health, about his sleep, his daily activities, or else. For relationships, I'm asking him about his personal life, his personal relationships, his connect with others, his sex life, or whether he asks for help of others or not. So these are three latent variables. Now these three latent variables are actually accounting for subjective well-being. So subjective well-being is our construct. Okay, understood? Now these items, now what discriminant validity is? Discriminant validity is between these factors. As you see, this factor is measuring psychological well-being, okay, and this factor is measuring physical health and well-being. Now if there is high correlation between these two, then discriminant validity wouldn't be there. Okay, are you getting it? As you can see, the here you see 0.84. It means these are correlated with each other very highly. And same thing goes with F1 and F3. As you see, psychological well-being and relationships. So if someone is psychologically very well, then maybe their his relationships with others would be very good. Okay, the same thing goes with this. Now if someone is very fit physically, then his psychological well-being may be good. So that is why this correlation is very high. And if you see health and relationship, there is no such high correlation, 0.64 only. So what we need in discriminant validity, we need extent to which scores on a measure are not correlated with measures of variables that are conceptually distinct. If they are conceptually, they are not related, and in your analysis they are relating to each other, it means there is such problem. If conceptually I know that psychological well-being would be related to physical health and well-being, it means discriminant validity is there. Okay, understood? Any questions about discriminant validity? No?
Oh.
Fine. So now see the example of convergent validity. Convergent validity is factors loadings of the items. I have already mentioned you will have to use PCA and structure equation modeling to actually get to this thing. Now in structural equation modeling, SEM, and in PCA, what we do, we have factor loading. Now as you see, for psychological well-being, the factor loadings, see the factor loadings are very high. Factor loadings of 0.4 and above are called very good. So all these factor loadings are very high. It means I am measuring psychological well-being with these items, and all the items are having factor loadings of more than 0.4. It means these items are actually measuring psychological well-being. Okay, so what convergent validity was? As you see, degree to which two measures of constructs that theoretically should be related are in fact related. So if they are theoretically related, and in your analysis also they are actually seem to be related, it means convergent validity is there. So for these three. You can also see for physical health and well-being. So for convergent validity, what you see? You will see the factor loadings of the items. For discriminant validity, what will you see? You will see the correlations between the factors. If conceptually the correlation between psychological well-being and physical health should be high, and this is showing high, then it's all okay. It means your discriminant validity is there. And if the conceptual framework or the literature review is telling you that there is no such relationship between physical health and relationships, it means this analysis should also show the same thing. And this is showing 0.64, which is very low correlation. And because I've already mentioned 0.8 and above correlation is taken to be seriously. If it is less than 0.7 or 0.8, then you can ignore it. Okay, so this is what discriminant validity and convergent validity. I hope you understood these things. Now, the last but not the least, the criterion validity. What criterion validity is? It is the extent to which people's score on a measure are correlated with other variable known as criteria. Okay, so here criterion variable is what? Criterion variable is your outcome variable, and your measure is your explanatory variable. Okay, or you can say this is your regressant and this is your regressor. Okay, this is your explanatory variable and this is your criterion variable. So you will see how much your one measure is related to the another measure. It means how well your explanatory variable is actually correlating with your criterion variable. If the correlation is very high, it means criterion validity is there. Okay, one can say that how well the measurement of one variable can predict the response of another variable. Here another variable is criterion variable. Let's say you want to have explanatory variable as, let's say, GDP, increasing income. So increasing income is your explanatory variable, and your outcome variable is labor force participation rate. So what is the effect of increasing national income on labor participation rate, whether it is increasing, decreasing, or is being constant? So this is, you see, if there is high correlation between these two, then it means criterion validity is there. Okay, I'll give you an example. If it were found that students' score were in fact negatively correlated with this example, negatively correlated with their exam performance, okay, on an important school exam, okay, then this would be a piece of evidence that these scores really represent students' test anxiety. Okay, it means increasing anxiety and negative performance. Okay, so there is negative correlation. So the performance and anxiety are negatively correlated. If the student has much more anxiety, then their performance would be very bad. Okay, now on the other hand, if it were found that people scored equally well on the exam regardless of the of their test on anxiety scores, then this would be this would cast doubt on the validity of the measure. So it means you are measuring the anxiety and the test you are using to check the anxiety is actually not working well, because if concept or criteria is telling you that anxiety should negatively correlate with their performance, and everyone is doing very well, uh, whether they are having a problem of anxiety or not, then it means we are testing the anxiety with wrong items or with wrong measures. And if this is happening, it means criterion validity is not there. The criterion validity can be of two types, predictive and concurrent. And the approach is correlation and regression. Simply, you have to calculate correlation and regression analysis. You can actually have whether this criterion validity is there or not. Now, predictive validity is what? Whether or not the measurement of one variable is able to accurately predict the measurement of some variable in the future. Let's say you are measuring a student's college entrance exam score, and by that you are actually in the next semester you see the GPA, CGPA of the students. Now those students who did very well in entrance exam are obviously going to do very well in first semester GPA. If these scores are correlating and the correlation is very high, it means you have a predictive criterion validity. Okay, and if not, then it goes wrong, all wrong. It means what you are actually your criterion criterion variable is not actually giving what you have as assumed. You assume that students, those students which will do good in entrance exam will also do good in GPA. Okay, but it's not happening. So it means predictive criterion validity is not there. Concurrent validity, it means at the same point of time. So measures two variables concurrently to see if one variable is significantly associated with the other. Okay, and for that you can with the previous with the previous example which I have shown from Pontin et al 2015, you can have correlations with the Goldberg anxiety and depression scales. So you see and there is composite score of list of threatening experience, and you see whether anxiety, depression, and the number of negative life events, they are negatively correlated with the well-being or not, and with the three subscales or not. As you see here, some questions here you see whether you are depressed or not, whether you enjoy your life or not, purpose in life or not. All these variables are also included in Goldberg anxiety and depression scales. So we see whether these things are correlating with each other or not, whether anxiety, depression, and negative life events are actually affecting well-being or not. So here well-being is actually your criterion variable, and anxiety, depression, and negative life events are your explanatory variables, or you can say your regressors. These are references which I have took to make this presentation, and thank you so much. If any questions are there, the questions are welcome.
Yes, dear participants, now after such a wonderful session, if you have any doubts, so you may ask. And I must say that it was a very the content was really very good. So the basic validation tools that you have expressed it so nicely. So yeah, sir, example for the composite reliability. Sumita madam.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Let me see. Sumita madam, sir, any example of composite reliability? Madam, in literature, you will see so many bifurcations, or you will see so many types of reliability. Okay, what reliability is means that you should have consistency and you should have stable relationships. And this composite reliability, as I already mentioned in the examples, I'll come to that. Yes, this internal consistency. So all these composite reliabilities come in the ambit of internal consistency. Composite reliability means whatever items or measures you are actually taking to measure your construct, compositely they are reliable or not. So compositely they are reliable or not would be only possible when you have a Cron-Bash alpha calculated for that, because Cron-Bash alpha will take all the possible combinations of those items to check for whether these items are actually measuring the same thing or not. So composite readability or reliability comes in the ambit of these things. You can have a simple example can be subjective well-being. If you are measuring subjective well-being, yeah.
Yeah, hello, sir.
Yeah.
Good evening, sir. This is
Good
Sumita
evening.
itself. Sir,
Yes.
but these days, whenever we take a journals from A star or A, we tend to see along with the reliability, people give that the composite reliability scores along with that a CR, and also they give something like an average variance extracted score, AVE, and all those things. But
Yes.
these things can be seen only in the top rated journals, but the normal if you talk about a B or A journals, you cannot see. But is it mandatory now for any type of a scale to be validated? Cronbach alpha is sufficient, or is it that we have to give composite reliability, or because normally composite reliability in one of the workshop they have shown it to us, saying that how you can calculate it through the factor loadings. That is, once you conduct a factor analysis, whatever the
Yes.
scores that we get it using the factor loadings, how exactly you can calculate the composite scores, that is composite reliability. But is it mandatory now to give it for valid the items or valid the construct? Is it required that we have to give a composite reliability and average variance extracted scores?
Yes. See, as far as composite reliability is concerned, uh, uh, you have factor loadings. As already mentioned, that there is SEM, structural equation modeling. Okay, and in this structural equation modeling, you have advanced types of measures or tools to actually measure validity or to actually measure your reliability. As I already mentioned, there is SB chi-square, RCMA, RCFI, all these things. And in advanced researchers are using these techniques with the help of software packages, because now software packages are giving you everything what you want. Okay, if you use Stata or SPSS, you can have SEM, you can do SEM, or you can make constructs, you can make content variables. And as the use of these softwares are increasing, then and with the help of these type of workshops, people are using these things. And if you should use these things. But remember that using only quantitatives, you cannot actually have a good research. You should have a conceptual framework, a very stable conceptual framework. And if you have a very good conceptual framework, all these type of problems of reliability and validity would itself be vanished. So I'll suggest you to actually make a conceptual framework that has a good content validity, good face validity. If it has a good content validity and face validity, obviously it will have composite reliability, as well as your test retest reliability, and so on. So all these reliability would be checked. But if you want to use quantitatively more, then you can use all these things, RMSEA, as RCFI. I would have taken on those things, but this would not solve the purpose. The purpose
Correct.
was to actually give you an introduction to these things. So that is why I
Sir,
haven't
I have
included.
another question.
Yes, yes,
Sir, I
yes.
have another question. Say, for example, you say you have taken a variable like psychological well-being is one of the variable, which is a
Yes.
construct for which you had already a scale, which was already established scale, and you have tested the validity using the confirmatory factor analysis,
Yes,
and
yes.
that the validity is very high. Okay,
Yeah.
now say for example, if I am going to construct items under defining or say intending to measure a psychological well-being, taking a standard scale, and I have little changed the items. Say for example, maybe some items could be a double barreled and all this. I've done little modifications, and I have done the pilot study, and I'm testing that validity of the scores. Now suppose if my validity comes better than the intended items which is already existing scale, so can I contradict the original study or something like that on
Yeah,
original
why
scale?
not? Why not? Actually, all these measures are developing day by day. Okay, what we had earlier of subjective well-being, the measure of subjective well-being, now it has been totally changed. Now
Right.
people are using more and more items to actually predict the subjective well-being. Like I have already mentioned you, there are three factors. in continental. And if you explore the research or reviews, earlier reviews, you will see more and more the relationships would be is still factorized in social capital and so on, physical capital. And here you haven't seen a physical capital one, so
Yes.
physical capital can also be included in that. So this can be advanced, but always remember that whenever you are including one or more thing, it means you are now using deductive and inductive reasoning both, as I've
Yes.
mentioned here. If you are using a priori set of codes, you are going deductive. Okay. And if
Right.
if you are using new codes or new things, new items, it means you are going inductive. And for inductive, you should have observations, a number of observations that are that can be justified with some p values. So if you have more than 2000, 3000, or a pan India survey, and now you are arguing that no, this measurement or this level should be revised, what I have given is better than the earlier one.
Okay.
Okay, for that you need this thing, you need more and more observation. As I already mentioned, that for inductive type of coding, you need a larger sample, you need observations to come to a new theory, to come to create a new theory. Okay, so
So
you
why this question I have asked you is because we have
yeah.
taken up a minor research on conflict management. I'm sorry, I'm taking a little more
no,
questions.
it's okay.
Okay.
It's okay.
This is regarding about a minor research which we have done it on measuring the conflict management. That is the type of conflicts among the academicians in
Okay.
my own city. So we have taken about whether the faculties are accommodative and all those things. So there was a standard scale by Uday Parikh, and we have used that, and we have
Okay.
understood that when we analyze that scale, there were a lot of double barrel questions and all those things. So we have little change, modified it, and we have proved the validity, content validity, face validity, and everything. But when we presented this in Malaysian conference, they were little apprehensive about why you have taken the original, why could not you take up the original scale? And but irrespective of me saying no, you cannot say that because the double barrel questions is already accepted, and it was accepted in 1977, and now you are saying these things and all this. This was one discussion that was there. So I just
Okay.
wanted to know it. Is it that people tend to normally use it as it is, or a little modification and say, because normally people in workshops like this, they say that try avoiding maximum to create your own statements under to define a construct. It's better to save yourself to take it from the standardized scale. People tend
No,
normally tell this.
then if you use the same, I've already mentioned that if you use the same codes, okay, and now you are using the same codes on some geographical area, or say on some sample, then it would become empirical research. So what would it would give nothing, it would give the same results, and it would be called an empirical research. So what you are doing is actually you are not doing a new thing, you are just taking the another sample. So let's say that the study hasn't happened in the Karnataka, so I'm using it in Karnataka. This study has been happened in Maharashtra, so I'm not sampling
Right.
from Maharashtra, I'm sampling from Karnataka. So this happens, and almost these type of studies will give the same results. So
Right.
whenever you are using new codes, you should use your tools are your observations, because
Right.
more and more observations will give you more and more reliability and validity. So they won't be able to cut your discussion in between. They'll say, okay, yes, that is why NSS samples are more reliable in India than IHDS, Indian Human Development Survey. Indian Human Development Survey only takes a few samples, but your NSS takes a very large sample. And when it comes to census, then no one can actually point a finger on census, because it is a complete enumeration of population.
Yes. Sir,
So
one last question, sir.
yeah,
Under
yeah.
each construct, how many items do you suggest to be there? What is the minimum number and what would be the maximum number to define a construct? What are the number of items that you would say should be there to define a particular construct? The minimum number and the maximum number.
See, there is no such perfect answer to this, that this should be a minimum one, this should be a maximum one. It all depends upon the idea, or it all depends upon the item. the items you are taking, whether the item is encapsulating the whole thing or not. So if let's say I'm measuring social capital, okay, social capital, a latent variable or a construct. So for social capital, if I have measured the things on individuals relationships, individuals community belongingness, individuals let's say the behavior with others, or the behavior in the society. So all these make social capital, okay, a content variable, a latent variable, sorry. So there is no such formula to use 3 or 4 or 4 or 5. When you have segregated your items very at a micro level, then you will have many more questions, okay, a particular question to a particular identification. But if you have common questions, then you will have lesser questions. Like if you ask a person that whether you are community belonging, rate your community belonging out of a scale 1 and 10. So this a whole community belonging will come to one question, but the reliability would not be there, because you are taking only one question to actually comprehend community belongingness. So this is the problem. So you take as many possible ones as to actually make a latent variable. This would be very good. If you take more and more, that would be very good, because the factor loadings will clearly tell you that which one to take and which one to take it out and which one to take it in. That factor loading will tell you about.
Yes, and also you told that the factor loading above 0.4 is considerably good, but generally in the research papers they consider the fact they suppress the factor loadings below 0.5. So
Below,
there also we
okay.
yeah, below 0.5. So anything above 0.4, you said it is good. So if you say if
Yes,
normally
this is based on literature review only.
yes. Thank
many,
you, sir.
Many literature say that 0.4 above 0.4 loading is very good.
Yes, thank you so much, sir.
Welcome. Any more questions on Ms. Sumita has asked everything, and I hope now everyone has got something out of it. Any more questions? Professor Tushar, Dr. Harsh, I think.
Sir, if you
Yeah.
can check chat box, if there is any.
Okay. Let me see.
I think
Yes.
sir has covered all the questions in the chat box. Yeah, there is no new question, sir.
Yes, no new questions.
And Sumita madam is saying that thank you, sir. This was the far best session. Thank you, Sumita madam.
Thank you. Actually, the technical sessions, people are actually interacting and are they very vigilant when someone is showing the quantitative analysis. and research methodologies one are very boring one. So because everyone knows what quantitative and what qualitative is. So I hope this was fruitful for the participants, and if something has been left, then we'll see some other day, or you can have my email, or you can ask on that. This is for the participants. They can ask for
Possible
any help.
details, sir. Just show
Yes,
them email address if it is there in any one of the slides. So
yes.
Yeah.
I posted it my email. So they can ask, or whatever they can collaborate, they can do research work with me, anything, because they are also social scientists, so I learned something from them also.
Yes, sir. So thank you, participants. So I would formally propose my vote of thanks. So on the behalf of Mahatma Education Society's Mahatma 9 Degree College, I thank you, sir, that you delivered such a wonderful session, and this is what was required from the participant side. This was the demand from participants only, that they want more practical knowledge about the session, and you did the justice for this. Thank you very much. And I don't know about others, but definitely I will be in touch with you, because my area of research, I also play with the NSSO data, and there are certain things we can learn from each other. So thank you very much, sir.
Yes, yes, definitely.
And
Thank you, Dr. Harsh. Thank you.
thank you, sir. And I'll just share the feedback form in the group. Dear participants, you are requested to fill the feedback form. Thank you, sir. And
Thank
Tushar
you.
sir will communicate with you about the other formalities. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you once again for inviting and among these August gathering. And thank you so much once again. Thank you, Harsh, and thank you, Tushar sir.
Thank you, Suraj sir.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
We'll be in touch with you.
Sure, sure. Thank you.